Good evening and welcome to a regular meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. It is the evening of February 16th, 6 p.m. in the evening. This is the second Tuesday of the month when we have our regular meetings. I'd like to call this meeting to order and tonight invite you to stand and join us in an invocation led by Pastor David Parker of the Oak Harbor First United Methodist Church. When Pastor Parker is finished, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Parker?
Thank you, friends. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, as we gather tonight to conduct the business of our city, we are mindful of the great privilege of democracy, of the sacred trust of our elected and appointed leaders, our mayor, council members, and many civil servants. We recognize both the opportunities and the challenges that arise in governing both peoples and lands. So tonight, as always, we pause first to look up to heaven and to ask for your faithful hand of providence to be upon our city council. Grant them keen insight of our times, the wisdom to know our best paths forward, and to embrace strategic practices with timely communication and application for the decisions that will impact us all. As supportive citizens, may we learn to meld and blend well our many diverse convictions and hopes for our hometown. Train our lives in the course of civility and in the cause of selfless service for our unity. May our Oak Harbor City become a stronger community and a more resilient family because we have gathered our lives tonight to work for her greater good. We thank you, gracious and loving God, for your guidance, wisdom, and help. And we pray these blessings in your holy name. Amen. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
So due to COVID-19, there is no physical meeting location per Washington Proclamation 20-28. I'm sorry? Tonight's meeting may be viewed live via YouTube and played or replayed on cable channel 10. In addition, the public may call 623-404-9000 and enter the meeting ID, which is 149-766-1467 to listen to the meeting live for audio, and this is for audio only. Council members and city staff are participating via teleconference. The staff sitting in council chambers are all physically distanced at least 6 feet apart and will be wearing masks when they are not speaking. Guests that are included in staff presentations will be excused from the Ring Central meeting at the conclusion of the agenda item as appropriate. So will our city clerk please give our roll call for the evening. Julie?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Present.
Councilmember Heisen.
Present.
Councilmember Servadius.
Present.
Councilmember Wassinger.
Present.
Councilmember Wiesner.
Present.
Councilmember Mack.
Present.
Councilmember Goebel.
Present.
Thank you, Mayor. All council members are present.
Thank you, Julie. Welcome to all of council. So this evening, I'd like first for approval of the agenda, and seeing no changes for our agenda, it'll be we'll proceed with the agenda as it has been presented. We are pleased tonight to have our United States Representative Rick Larsen give us a presentation for our city council meeting. Representative Larsen, we thank you for your time this evening. Nice to see you there, and thank you for joining us. I understand you want to speak for a short time, 3 to 5 minutes thereabouts, and then take some questions if necessary. So With that, Representative Larsen, thanks for being here and welcome aboard. Oops, you're going to have to unmute. Can't hear you. There we go.
All right, how's that? Great, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Always good to check the sound first. Appreciate that. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Given that we're still in pandemic mode, we're making some changes to do a little more outreach, different kind of outreach. And so you're the second city council meeting I've been able to do some outreach to. I just want to spend a little time getting people updated on sort of what's in the news, and that has to do with COVID-19 relief. I want to first off thank the mayor and thank the city council for this opportunity. I do appreciate it. First thing I want to say is I've heard from many of you, read the letters and heard from constituents on a variety of social media about the gaps that remain in vaccine distribution in Island County and across the state. So earlier this month, I wrote to Jeff Zients, who's the president's COVID-19 coordinator, about two things. One is providing additional vaccines to counties like Island County, where a lack of chain pharmacies required the county, in this case, the Would-Be Health, to supply vaccines to long-term care residents, an activity that was supposed to be done by the larger chain pharmacies, but was not. So Would-Be Health used some of its allocation for that. So we're exploring this idea about trying to even up that distribution in future distributions. I talked with the governor about this as well, and we still don't have an answer yet from the administration, but we'll continue to work that out. As well as providing, the second issue is providing a larger and more consistent supply of vaccines in general. Today, the administration did announce that next week they'll be providing 13.5 million doses. They're delivering now about 57% more doses than they were on January 20th, the day they took office. So that's good news, but it's still not enough. And we're just going to continue to press to get more vaccines produced, manufactured, and distributed. We are waiting on the third vaccine, that is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is now before the FDA for emergency use authorization analysis, and would expect to hear within the next couple of weeks on that decision. But we know the public health response will lead to economic recovery, and that's why it's important that we continue to press for wearing masks, right? Wear the masks, practice social distancing, and just generally keep to your pod, generally. We are putting together another COVID-19 relief package. I was heartened to see that Island County and others moved to phase 2. That's welcome news for my constituents and your constituents alike, but we still have a long way to go, which is why the COVID-19 relief package is so important. So I would expect by the end of next week, so by about the 26th, the House of Representatives will have passed the Biden-Harris economic COVID-19 relief package and sent it to the Senate. Our goal is to have that to the president by March 14th. And March 14th is the deadline we picked because that's the day when the current federal unemployment compensation supplement runs out. But this relief package is about much more than that. Regarding Oak Harbor, preliminary aid relief aid estimates are that from the state and local government allocation in the Biden-Harris relief package, Oak Harbor would receive somewhere between, the city of, would receive somewhere between $4.3 and $5.1 million. The Island County government estimate, again, just for Island County government, is $16.6 million. This is important for a couple of reasons. One is we know you're still hurting, and I understand that. Second is that unlike the CARES Act, which limited the use of these dollars to strictly COVID-19 relief-related expenses, the way we wrote this relief package would allow the local entity, in this case Oak Harbor, Island County, to have much more flexibility in how they use those dollars, including revenue replacement. Keeping people, women and men on the job, continue to provide services to your constituents. So much more flexibility in the use of these dollars is the plan. The bill also would require the Department of Treasury to allocate these dollars within 60 days, 60 days, with 2 months of passage of the bill. So that gives us kind of timeline. There's a third element about public transportation. There's money in the bill for rural transit. And because Island Transit is a rural transit agency, there's not a specific formula that says it gets X amount of money, but under the CARES Act, Island Transit did get an allocation from the rural transit portion and is likely to get another one as well. And we'll continue working on that. There are economic impact payments, or the stimulus checks, some people call them. There's money in that to bring those, to bring that to $1,400, to bring it to a total of $2,000 when you add it to the December package. There's help again for your local food banks and for hungry families. There's a total of $120.5 billion for schools, K through 12, to help with reopening. Obviously not an issue that the city would deal with or the county would deal with, but obviously it's a question we're hearing from a lot of our own constituents. So these dollars would help schools safely reopen by helping to pay for how the schools are redesigning themselves, whether that's through PPE or plexiglass screens or so on, as well as money to help bridge the digital divide. So that's just, and I'll just do one more thing, Mayor, and I'll stop. But that's just the relief package. We're already starting to work on the recovery package, and that would include a transportation element, transportation and infrastructure investment element. And last year, I toured several projects in Island County that focus on safety improvements and connectivity. So that when we think about transportation and infrastructure funding, we are thinking about safety improvements to roads, to bridges, to highways. I'm trying to still get my medium-sized city provision in the transportation bill to help cities like Oak Harbor that are too small to you can't do a lot with little money, but you're not big enough to get a lot of money. I'm trying to shape this formula a little bit better to help mid-sized cities like Oak Harbor. I will finally end on one more issue, that's childcare. I did a series of roundtables a couple weeks ago on childcare, including an Island County roundtable. And we know since the pandemic began, the childcare capacity has decreased by more than 20% in Island County. So last month I held a roundtable with providers and stakeholders that rely kind of on this piecemeal network of childcare providers, especially given the shortfall in your area, the area I represent with Naval Air Station Woodby Island, a shortfall in childcare for folks on the island. So there's still work to be done there, and there's always work to be done to continue to support Naval Air Station Woodby Island, and I'll continue to work with you all to find ways to continue to support the women and men and the missions there at Naval Air Station Woodby Island. So, it's a new year. Although I will say sometimes it already seems like a really long year, 2021, but the vaccines are getting out there. Hopefully that'll shorten the year up. It's a new Congress, it's a new administration, it's an opportunity to try a lot of new things. And so I hope to work with you all, Mayor, and the City Council as we move forward in the year to get through the pandemic and get the economic recovery back on track. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor, to facilitate questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Larsen. So I'll turn to the council at this point, and it looks like we've got a couple of questions. Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Congressman Larsen. We truly appreciate all the efforts you're doing back on the other coast as well as back here at home and driving dollars our direction. We realize that you're feeling it just like we are, right? It's certainly been an interesting year by all means. One thing I do miss is our annual get-together back in DC, and be able to bring those back soon. So the last time you and I had met, we briefly discussed the possibility of resurrecting commercial airline travel here to the island, and I think that opportunity still exists. And hopefully moving forward, I'm just planting that seed that with the infrastructure package that we're working on and the connectivity portion of that. Obviously, with us being stuck with just the ferries and the bridge is our only access, that commercial traffic, airline traffic could be an integral part to that. So again, I appreciate all the efforts you're doing, and anything we can do, obviously, on our end to help those efforts back there. Hopefully, you won't hesitate to ask. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. I continue to be the chair of the aviation subcommittee. Our first hearing will be on the pandemic recovery in the aerospace and aviation industry, including airlines. And this is related to your issue. Not surprisingly, no airline, big or small, is looking to expand service in new areas right now. But I think it is important to bring this issue up because there will be, as big and small airlines recover, there's also the opportunity to look at different opportunities than maybe existed before the pandemic. And so it's probably more of an issue to focus on with regional airlines or even smaller, more the localized 3 or 4 that are in the area. But thanks for replanting the seed for me, and we'll keep it in mind.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Congressman Larsen, you were talking about helping cities and stuff. We are very close waiting for permits to bring fiber across the bridge through the water line through a joint project with Anacortes. What has become shockingly front is so many of our citizens, I mean, they don't even have good cell coverage, much less Comcast or Wave. I mean, it's not even always that good for Wi-Fi. But will there be grants that the city could maybe get a hold of to help provide this fiber connection to all our residents? And then where we can't reach or outside of ours for the school district, so we can continue it on. Because it's not satisfying for a kid to be loaded up in a car, go sit near a bus. There's no bathroom. There's no food unless you pack the snacks. I mean, it is something that it's a way of life now, and we need to have it, especially here on the island. So do you think there will be some grants that the city could get to help provide this once we get the fiber through the permitting so that it's on our side of the bridge?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. The either in the CARES Act or the bill we did in December, there is money in the education portion for to close the digital divide in education access and broadband. So that's kind of where that focuses now. And then in the Relief Act as well that we're dealing with right now, there's additional money again for digital divide investment. With regards to the specific concerns of the city, I'm going to defer an answer until I have a better one. But we are in contact with Councilmember or Commissioner St. Clair, Janet St. Clair from Island County Commission, and she's part of a 5-county, maybe 4, but 4-county consortium between Island, North Snohomish, Skagit, and Whatcom, and they're trying. The electeds there are trying to piece together what that broader broadband network would look like, and Anacortes again is part of that as well. So I'd want to put a better answer in that context because if you're crossing, you're taking it from Anacortes into Skagit, into Island County proper, and then into the city of Oak Harbor. Just want to put that in that context. The second thing I got to keep in mind too is that a lot of this is being run through the Department of Commerce in the state of Washington in terms of expanding broadband. And so I'd want to get a better answer for you in the context of what the State Department of Commerce is doing as well. Having said all that, what I have told Commissioner St. Clair and others is that there are grant programs, but what we need to have are grant programs that fit your needs. A lot of times we have grant programs for rural broadband, but that may get it to the city limits, but not into the city, as a for instance. So having grant programs that fit your needs is important. So I'd want Brittany Jarno, who works for me, to maybe get back to you to talk about what would be the specific how it would have to be shaped for the city of Oak Harbor so it would work. That's kind of so that's how I'm trying to think through this for the region.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That was a good question, and we've made some notes here at the staff level too, so we'll be in touch on that. Thank you.
Please, yeah.
Don't see any other council hands up, so again, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time this evening. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you somewhere soon, hopefully in person.
I hope to see you in person, but I won't make a prediction on a date. I will just predict it will happen.
Great. Okay. Great. Thanks again.
Right. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on then to section 3 of our agenda, which is citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on subjects of interest not listed on the agenda or items listed on the consent agenda. Citizens may also comment on corresponding agenda items listed below. To submit a comment, please use the online comment form at bit.ly/OH public comment. That's bit.ly/OH public comment. Or email the city clerk at jlindsay@oakharbor.org. Prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting, or call 360-279-4539 to leave a voicemail to be played during the council meeting. Call to leave a voicemail after 5 p.m. on the Friday preceding the meeting and prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting. When leaving a voicemail for public comment, please state your first and last name clearly and limit comments to 3 minutes. For tonight's council meeting, we did receive public comments regarding item number 9C, the proposed acquisition of the Angel of Creativity sculpture, which City Clerk Julie Lindsay will address when we reach that agenda item. And that concludes our public comment then, right? Okay, for this evening. So then we will move to our consent agenda. The staff has presented the listed consent agenda, all of which were included in the meeting packet. And if there are any questions or comments about those, I think we have items number A through E. Okay, not seeing any, then the consent agenda will be approved as presented. Thank you. We'll move on then to mayor's comments, section 5A, community response to COVID-19. You've heard me say this for a number of meetings, that the city facilities remain open, but we would like to remind the community of our many options to conduct business and connect with staff virtually. Electronic bill pay, virtual development application meetings, virtual boards and commissions meetings, and an online comment portal are just a few of the ways we have adapted to meet the needs of the community during this pandemic. More details and resources about the local impact of COVID-19 can be found on our website at www.oakharbor.org/COVID-19. Vaccinations. The community guidance from Island County Public Health shows that as of February 4, 2021, 10,425 individuals in Island County received their prime first dose of vaccine and 6,025 received their booster or second dose. Currently, providers in Island County are vaccinating individuals with Pfizer and Moderna doses. Vaccine shipments are going slower than expected. We continue to ask everyone to be patient and appreciate the work of community partners, volunteers, providers, vaccination teams, and people helping community members get appointments. You can find the link to Island County Public Health's COVID-19 vaccination information page from our city website and Facebook page. Please continue saving lives by practicing the 3 W's: wear your mask, watch your distance, and wash your hands. Get tested if you have COVID-19 symptoms or have been exposed. Island Transit press release response to mask mandate. Island Transit issued a press release in response to the federal mandate from the Transportation Security Administration effective February 2nd. Federal law requires all public transportation riders to wear a mask covering their nose and mouth at all times. Free masks are available on all buses. Island Transit remains committed to working with public health authorities to implement the latest in preventative measures to protect their riders and employees. Island Transit's #1 goal is safety. For more information, visit the Island Transit website at www.islandtransit.org. Letters to Governor Inslee. I sent a couple letters, one regarding the county's vaccine allocation and one requesting that he consider separating Island County from Skagit, Whatcom, and San Juan. The response from the governor's office was consistent with his press conference that same afternoon, in which he expressed that the regions will not be altered. On February 3rd, the Legislative District 10 representative sent a joint letter to Governor Inslee expressing many of the same concerns. I was pleased to hear Governor Inslee's February 11th announcement that our North region would be moving to Phase 2 and then updating the effective date to this past Sunday, February 14th. I am encouraged by this progress. The past Wednesday and Thursday, the city administrator, the mayor pro tem, and I attended AWC's City Action Days. Of course, this was done virtually. This is annual during the legislative session. This popular event allows attendees the opportunity to interact with colleagues as they educate statewide decision makers about city legislative priorities. This year's the format was virtual and included training sessions on lobbying state legislators. City snow response. I'd like to offer my thanks to City Operations Manager Steve Beebe and our great streets team and our great staff at Public Works. They were responsive to the current snowstorm. They did a great job of keeping our streets open and responding to businesses and residents' needs. Kudos to all involved. Also, in that same light, I got a really nice email from an employee at Perkins Coie Law Office in Seattle. Her name is Nelsa Doctor. Her mother, Maria, called our non-emergency number to ask for help with getting her garage door opened back when our power was out. She needed to get to a doctor's appointment. Her mother did, and she's 86 years old, and of course not as strong as she used to be. Several of our team members from our fire department came to her house, got her garage door open, and even showed her how to get it open the next time that power goes out. They were very kind to her, wanted to express my gratitude to those members for their help. It's nice to know that she can ask for help on such a simple thing as getting her garage door open. And I think our people in those departments, both police and fire, are constantly helping our citizens. We can't thank you enough. Thank you. Two city staffers moving on to new opportunities. Tonight marks the last regular council meeting for our city engineer, Jim Bridges. Jim, we're certainly going to miss you. I know that you'll be at a workshop next week, but it's not the same as a council member. We also want to wish the best of luck in his new endeavor to not only our city engineer, Jim Bridges, but also our city stormwater engineer, Brad Gluth. Both have contributed many great years of time and expertise to the city. We thank them and wish them well in their new endeavors. And then if they get an opportunity or would like to say something, you're welcome to say something either this evening or later on in the meeting. So thank you very much. With that, then we'll move on to council comments. Any council comments? Councillor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a thought on, we have coming up here some citizen comment, and thank you as always. Sabrina, I'm assuming you're listening. I had a thought here. Whenever someone asks me the easiest way to get a hold of us or to supply comment, especially if they're trying to get information to the council, the simplest way that I give them is if they send an email to council@oakharbor.org. That goes to all of the council members. Obviously, you could add or CC mayor@oakharbor.org. If you wanted the mayor to receive that, and or I don't know if we have our clerk on that as well, just easy titles that are easy to remember for folks. I know, Mayor, you read the bit.ly URL there, but I don't know if everyone's going to remember that. And my suggestion is I was looking at our website when people were asking me how to provide input. On the main oakharbor.org page, there's a thing that says contact us. And that appears that just generates an email to info@oakharbor.org. And so I'm not sure who that goes to. What I was wondering if there's a way, if someone drills down a little further and goes to how do I, and we could tell them this, but I guess you go to oakharbor.org, how do I, and then comment. There is a link there to submit a public comment to the city council. And I like this form because it's more specific. It asks them a couple of questions. Their name, do they live in the city limits? What is the council meeting date and the agenda item? I'm wondering if there's not a way to combine those two forms so that if someone said, how do I comment? We can very simply say, go to our webpage, oakharbor.org, and click this button and get that button kind of foremost, because to me, it's very valid information. We want to hear from people. So let's find a way to make it as easy as possible. I know it's on the agenda. There's a link there they can click on. But if just we're out on the street, out at the grocery store, and someone says, hey, I heard this was coming up on the agenda. How do we comment? It seems like it would be nice if we could just say oakharbor.org, push the button on the main page. And I think there might be a way to combine those two buttons to contact us in addition to the how do I submit a public comment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Servadius. Councillor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that, Councilor Servadius. Very good points. And yes, you know, the hearing from the constituents is the lifeblood of this council, and being able to do that easily and simply is very important. So I appreciate that. I just also wanted to thank staff, city staff during Snowmageddon 2021. You know, we had trees down. I know fire department out working on police department's out working. Our public works and our operations department did a fantastic job of keeping the roads passable and our citizens safe. So great job to all. You know, of course, it happened on a weekend. It happened on Valentine's weekend to boot. And I know a lot of you spent time away from your families in order to get the mess cleaned up. So thanks much. Great job. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Looks like that concludes our council comments then. Thank you. We will move on then to item number 6A. This evening's item number 6A is intent to commence annexation. I believe that tonight we have our senior planner, Kat Kamak, to present this. Kat, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the City Council. Excuse me. Here to present an annexation request that the city has received from Michael Good. And this is a 1 acre, 2 parcels that's total about 1.8 acres on the northwest corner of Gun Club Road and Oak Harbor Road. So I have a short presentation. I'm going to share my screen and we'll come back to questions and discussion. Okay, hopefully you can see that. I have the slides here, just a very short presentation. Again, as stated, it's just on the northwest corner of Gun Club Road and Oak Harbor Road. This location map is included in your council packet. The property location is highlighted here, and it's contiguous to the city across. Oh, sorry, my light is on a sensor and goes out. So the property is contiguous to the city by being across Oak Harbor Road, as shown on the map over here. And in the request that we received, email request, the applicant mentioned that the property owners to the west are also interested. They did not sign the petition. However, he said, if the city council accepts to move this annexation forward, then they too would be interested in being in the within the city limits. So that's some additional information that we're aware of with the application. So what does the annexation mean? The decision to annex is entirely up to the city council. This is not like a permit or any other sort of application. This is entirely up to the city council to decide whether to move forward or not. However, the RCWs do give some direction in terms of whether, when you do decide to annex, what are the things to consider. This is included in your report. These are the 3 clauses to consider: whether you want to accept the area as proposed or you want to geographically modify it. We'll talk a little more about this particular one after I just go through the short presentation. It also talks about adopting the zoning if the property comes into the city, and to also be part of the city indebtedness. So in general, if the city accepts this annexation request and goes forward with the annexation, this is in general with any annexation, there's increase in service demands, fire and police, so that's something to be aware of. There's always transportation impacts, so more streets being brought into the city, more infrastructure being brought into the city. And then there are also some property-specific infrastructure connections that will be required. Developing property in the city would require frontage improvements, and there will be also access restrictions. In terms of zoning, this property will be classified as industrial when it comes into the city limits. And in terms of indebtedness, you want all properties that come into the city to be part of the tax-paying system, and that's basically what this clause states. So before I jump into the recommended action, I'll go back here to the map and talk about geographic modification. So this annexation request, when it did come into the city, the normal routine for staff is to distribute it to different departments and get input and discuss the possibilities and the impacts and opportunities here. So in that discussion, we did discuss, and I did include this information in your report, whether there would be benefit in annexing Gun Club Road, because we have Oak Harbor or Harbor Heights property and the plans to develop this in the future. So staff explored that possibility. There are some legal limitations. A city cannot annex just right away. The RCWs prohibit that. So if you want to bring Gun Club Road, you would either have to bring in property adjacent to it, either to the north or to the south. This is beneficial for a couple of reasons if you go that way. One is the development of Harbor Heights, and all the permits or any improvements related to Gun Club Road will be in the city's control, and that would be under our engineering department to handle that. So there are some benefits. However, if any of these properties or any of Gun Club Road is taken all the way to Harbor Heights, then we create an enclave because now the city will be connected and we'll have a donut hole here. And we don't want to create that. We know there are other enclaves in the city. Our annexation policy is written to remind us that these have issues, and logical extension of infrastructure and growth is better than creating these enclaves. So it was discussed. I've included some comments in the report related to that. However, given the timing of the phase one that we want to develop in Harbor Heights and the schedule that it demands, increasing the annexation area or trying to connect to Harbor Heights will actually delay the time it would take to bring all of this area in, and may not actually be beneficial in developing Harbor Heights. So in considering all these options, the recommendation tonight is for the city council to conduct a meeting with the applicant. I spoke to the applicant an hour before the meeting. He's unable to attend tonight's meeting. He has another meeting. He said he'll be on call if there are any questions or concerns, to call him and see if I can get answers from him. But he's aware of the meeting and he's okay. He's read the staff report. He's okay with the recommendations that are being proposed. So that's a comment from him. And the recommendation from staff is to just annex the properties that Mr. Good owns and just the two properties to the west, and let the development of connecting to Harbor Heights happen more organically, more from the south, more from 7th Avenue going upward. So with that, I will stop my screen share and turn it back to, okay, thank you. Turn it back to the mayor.
Thank you, CAC. Before I turn to council, I have one question. Your recommended action did say move to, but you're not looking for a motion to do that. You're just talking about moving towards that joint annexation. Isn't that correct?
Yes, just moving the annexation request forward.
Okay.
This action does not actually annex the property. This allows the city to take the next step forward, develop an annexation agreement with the property owners. There will be meets and bounds survey that needs to be done, that needs to be accompanied with an ordinance, and then we'll come back to the city council, and that's when you'll actually annex the property.
Okay, before we turn to the council then for input and questions, I want to make sure that we have no input from our public. Okay, we do not. So we'll turn to the council, and I see Councilor Wiesner has his hand up. Councilor Wiesner?
Okay, thank you, Mayor, and thanks for that presentation there, CAC. Now, I know we have water along Oak Harbor Road there already. What's a sewer connection for this property going to look like?
So if I can share screen, and Jim, city engineer, can chime in at any time, but let me see if I can go back to my presentation and see if I can answer that question. So we have water, as stated, from the water tank. A water line runs along Gun Club Road, so there's water to the property. I think there's gravity sewer potentially along here, so it's quite a ways away from being extended in this direction. There's plans to bring sewer up in this valley in the CIP. Eventually, there could be connections that could be made into that system. So they're not adjacent to the property, but they are somewhat in the vicinity. and over time could be extended to the property.
And it looks like the applicant proposes, and I know we're not looking at this now, that this is permits are down the line, but I just want to make sure, obviously, we're annexing a piece of property that's going to make sense for the city, right? That we're just not bringing in something that's just going to sit there. It's all about obviously maximizing development for us. It looks like they're proposing a development of some warehouses with office space there. Do you know, is it their intention to do that fairly soon, or they're going to be sitting back and waiting for that sewer connection extension?
I think they have plans. I mean, their drawings seem to indicate that they have some plans to move forward. The challenge will be in terms of how they can meet our development regulations, given the ideas that they have, and being in the city, what are the things that they can work out in terms of developing the property, and knowing that some of these infrastructures are a challenge. So the annexation agreement will be a good tool for them to use to see where they can meet the middle ground in terms of how they can develop that property.
Okay. I mean, I guess those the questions in my mind are relevant because obviously there's a lot of staff time and a lot of effort, put into these annexations, and I want to make sure that we're following a path where we're utilizing the time and the effort to actually annex property that's going to be productive. So I guess that's my concern there. But you said the applicant understands, it sounds like, some of these development challenges he's got ahead of him?
Yes, I spoke to him about some of the challenges, and we can discuss that in the annexation agreement. But I told him about the frontage improvements and about the utility connections, and he's aware of them because he's read the report that City Council has as well. So that has all of the engineering comments, the infrastructure improvements, and all of that will be required with development.
All right, and then we have plans at some point in time. We're hoping to extend that Gun Club Road down to Goldie. It's not on the CIP though, is that correct? I mean, that's like a long range out.
Yes, it is in our transportation plan to have Gun Club Road connect all the way to Goldie Road. There was some easements already dedicated along between Oak Harbor Road and Gun Club Road for a power line. I'm not sure about the details of whether those easements include right-of-way. However, there is some utility corridors that are already developing, and our comprehensive transportation plan has long-range plans to develop that as a road connection.
And in our long-range plans, it would seem that the industrial park is about all we would be zoning this property for because of our code for not extending housing north of Crosby Road.
That is correct. Our policy is to not encourage residential north of Northeast 16th Avenue. So Gun Club Road and all of these properties are north of Northeast 16th. So there'll be industrial. Now we bring up the point on the properties to the south that are currently residential. And so the challenge will be to eventually keep them as is, if possible, for the long run, and not have the potential to increase residential capacity in that area.
And currently these properties are in the county and they're just zoned rural residential in the county, I assume.
I believe so, yes.
And then one last question. Obviously, the neighbors will have an opportunity for input on the project when the project specific comes up.
Yes, there will be notice of application that we have that is distributed to property owners within 300 feet for any development project.
Great. Thank you, CAC. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, not seeing any other hands up, so I want to thank you, CAC, for your presentation tonight. We appreciate it. We will then move on to item number 7A, Resolution 2106, a resolution establishing the City of Oak Harbor's Shop Local campaign as a city priority. And we have our Public Information Officer, Sabrina Combs, to present tonight. Sabrina, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So per Councilmember Servatius's request, we have created a resolution to promote shopping local within Oak Harbor. And so some ways that we're doing that currently are that we created the supportoakharborbusiness.com website, and we're going to continue to promote that, working in partnership with the Chamber to make sure that we're continuing to tell the community about special events and activities. We do that through mailers that we're doing, as well as information on social media campaigns. The Chamber's doing some great videos highlighting specific local businesses. And then we're also telling businesses about the things that they can do to help their businesses as well. So I just wanted to make sure that we knew that there were other programs out there that we're helping them with. So the overall goal here is that we're using all of these tools and additional content to tell the community and promote shopping local. We'll be doing e-signs at Basement Gateway. We're also lobbying for programs that support businesses, and then doing these partnership events and reminders to the community. So that is the goal here. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Sabrina. Make sure that we haven't had any input from the public on this item. No, we have not, so we will move to the council. And you have a recommended action to adopt Resolution 2106 to establish the City of Oak Harbor Shop Local campaign. Turn to the council, and I see we have Councilor Servatius.
I just wanted to say thank you to staff for getting this pulled together. Sabrina, Mr. Oborn, the mayor, everyone so quickly. You know, I know we've done a lot, but I don't think we can do, there's not enough that we can do to try and help these businesses. One of the whereases in here says these businesses support local fundraisers, little league teams, and local families. And I know we've all seen the memes on social media that talk about, hey, all those times you've asked that local business to help out, now it's time to get back. So this has gone on a long time, this pandemic thing, and I know that it's going to continue to go on for a little while longer until the vaccines get rolled out and we can really start to open things up freely. Phase 2 is a great step. So I just don't want people to get lulled into a sense of, hey, this is all done and let's head off island somewhere. So please, let's really focus as we move into 2021 here and complete 2021. Even as those borders start to open up a little bit, I just think it's critically imperative that we try and keep as much of that money local as possible. So thank you, Mayor and staff, for pulling this together and all you're doing.
Thank you, Councilor Servatius. Those are great words. Really appreciate it. Thanks. Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say, too, the staff has really pulled out all the stops, and I know probably done some midnight oil or early morning to get this done, and really appreciate. One question, Sabrina, is that so everyone that has received CARES or didn't quite qualify, do you have a way to contact them with this on how we can maybe help publicize? I mean, you were listening to different things that we were doing to make them aware of this emphasis. I mean, I don't know. I just think it's a nice gesture to reach out and say, hey, we've heard you, council's heard you, the staff, we want to help. It's just a little thing to say, hey, did you know we're trying to do this? Any suggestions or, whatever, or how you can use this or something. I just feel like if you reach out the hand back to them, that always is encouragement and feels like somebody cares.
And Mayor Pro Tem Munns, I appreciate that. And in fact, that is why when we started the support oakharborbusiness.com page, we took the time to reach out to these businesses, in particular the ones that had participated in the grant, ones that are members of other groups, and additional ones we received on a list from Economic Development of Island County. And we really reached out to find out where they were at, whether they were open, what we could do to list them, and then make sure their categories were correct and that we were selecting them. And then from there, that is what is available so that the community members can connect with them. Because one of our main concerns was, I think one of the struggles that the community has is I want to support businesses, but who's open and where do I go for these services? And so we were trying to create that connection for the community, and I believe that's happening. People have the master list with the QR codes. They now have reminders, and we have one more reminder that's going out. And so I think that's helping. And then in addition, we are doing these regular social media posts to tell people, and on the website itself, it actually has a feature where a business who's interested can select it, fill out their information, and we get an email so that we can get them listed.
Fantastic. You always seem to be 1 or 2 steps ahead, so thank you. And I know you have many that help you too, so thanks.
Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't see any other hands up, so interrupt me if someone has something to say. Otherwise, I move to adopt Resolution 21-06 to establish the City of Oak Harbor Shop Local campaign as a city priority.
I'll second that.
Great. We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2106 as presented in the package. The motion by Councilor Servadius, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing no other input or questions, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Council. Thank you very much.
That was a yes from me. I'm using my daughter's computer and I can't find my, I can't find my hand or my yes. So if I interrupt, that's why.
That's all right. We got it. Thanks, Councilor Wassinger. Okay. We will then move on to item number 8A on the agenda, which is Fort Nugent Electric Flyers, agreement to fly model airplanes in the park. And that is presented tonight by our city attorney, Grant Weed. Welcome, Mr. Weed.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. This was a matter that was last before you, I believe, at your January 19th meeting. And we had a good discussion about this agreement with the Fort Nugent Flyers. And out of that discussion, I think there were 3 issues that still needed yet to be addressed. One was the form of the entity that we're contracting with. Second was the issue concerning insurance and what should be required of them. And then thirdly, there was some conflict between their operating rules and what they were allowed to fly versus what was in the agreement. So I'm happy to report to council that I think we have those issues addressed in a revised agreement that is in your packet tonight. But I also remember that during your last meeting, one of your council members, I may be mistaken, but I think it might have been Councilmember Wassinger, pointed out that there may be a lease between the city and the school district for a portion of the Fort Nugent Park that's used by the Flyers. And sure enough, we did some further research, and that is in fact the case. What we also learned, fortunately, is that lease is still in effect, but it does expire soon. It runs its course and expires on May 31st of this year. So that poses the question of, well, how can we both accommodate the Flyers and also make sure we have the right to make that property available? So our department, through Anna Thompson, has been in touch with the school district, and we are working toward an understanding about what we can do with the lease. And in fact, we have a meeting scheduled with the school district, I believe, for this Thursday to go over that. So the question becomes, in the meantime, what would the council's pleasure like to be? And I think there's probably two options available to you. One would be to wait and see what we can do in terms of extending the lease, which would mean further postponement for the Flyers and probably not the best outcome for them. The other option available to council, and the one that we would recommend that you consider tonight, is to go ahead and authorize entry into an agreement with the Flyers that would expire May 31st, but could be extended by mutual agreement of the parties. The idea being that if we're able to get an extension of the lease with the school district between now and then, we can also extend the agreement with the Flyers. So that would be, I think, what we'd recommend as the preferred option to the council, but certainly not the only one. With regard to the insurance, the way that that's been resolved is that the parent organization of the Flyers, the AMA, does provide a certificate and will provide a certificate of insurance with a single limit of $1 million and an aggregate of $4 million, which I think is sufficient. And it would name both the city and the Oak Harbor School District as additional insureds. So if we're able to secure that, I don't think we need to ask of the Flyers to provide a separate standalone policy from them. I think that would be sufficient if we get that certificate of insurance from the parent organization. So that issue, I think, has been resolved, and if there are questions the council have, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Grant. Making sure we have no input from the public on this. Okay, we don't, so we will turn to Councilor Servadius.
Mr. Weed, thank you. When I had made a comment about there was some inconsistency with quads, helicopters, and drones, I guess I didn't have a preference which way that went. You actually struck it from the, I don't know if this is displayed on the field or it says model aircraft field operating rules. So we took it out of that section. It still exists in the contract. And I'm wondering, from a liability standpoint, is there any reason that language might have been in that contract originally? Are there more concerns or issues with drones or helicopters? Are they more difficult to fly than perhaps a model airplane? And that's why that language was in the contract originally. Just curious, like I said, I didn't have a preference which way we went. I know that drones are very popular. We also talked about not allowing cameras on those, and I think every drone comes with a camera. That's kind of the main point of the drone. So just curious, any thoughts in your experience as to why that language would have precluded helicopters, drones, and quads?
That's a really, really good and insightful question. I don't have personal technical knowledge about whether some of those flying instruments have greater risk associated with them than others. I think the request, I would suspect, originally came from the Flyers, and those are the kinds of aircraft that their members wish to be able to fly. They were okay with the changes that we made to the operating rules, as I understand it. So at least all I can really say is I believe they're comfortable with the change that was made.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Servadius. Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Weed, for diving a little deeper into this and doing the research as far as the lease goes in the school district. And I get the impression that you're not just looking out for your client, who is the city, but also acting in the best interest of the community organization that wants to partner with us. So I I appreciate the level of detail that you're willing to go into for this. And if none of my peers have any other questions, I will move to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with the Fort Nugent electric flyers as presented.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with the Fort Nugent Electric Flyers as presented. Motion by Councilor Heisen, second by Councilor Wiesner. Seeing no other questions or input, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, we've got one aye and 6 hands raised. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Council.
And thank you, Mayor and Council. Once we have a better idea of what we might be able to work out with the school district, we would be coming back to you to address the lease issue. And so we'll keep you posted on the outcome of that.
Okay, we'll move on then to item number 8B this evening, which is 2021 TBD, Transportation Benefit District Street Overlay Interagency Agreement with Island County. And we have soon to be departing our city engineer, Jim Bridges, will present this. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. Yeah, so tonight, I bring forward the interlocal agreement with Island County. This is similar to what we did last year. Signed the interlocal agreement. Island County provides the manpower, the labor and equipment, and the construction management of the contract. And so when I brought this forward to council last fall for approval of the projects that we had intended to do for 2021, the map that we presented at that time indicated that we were going to do chip sealing and overlays similar to what we did in 2020. Unfortunately, in November, the county called and they said, hey, it's a heck of a lot of work for county forces to do this type of work, not just for us, but for the other cities in the county as well. And so they were moving to a biannual process. So 1 year they'll do chip seals and 1 year they'll do overlays. And it just so happened that this year for 2021, they're going to focus on overlays. 2022, they will do the chip seals. So we had to modify our map, which also modified our cost for the project. And so the agreement in front of the council tonight is for a contract for 2021 TBD work of $577,757. That's the engineer's estimate. And also for the 2021 street overlay project of $480,457 for a total estimated cost for both projects of $1,132,289. So I think Lisa just shared the map, and I appreciate that, Lisa. So on that map, you will see, let me get back to my camera here. You will see the streets in red. Those are the streets that are going to be overlaid as the TBD. The streets in green are the streets that will be overlaid as the 2021 overlay project. So that's the project for this coming year. Next year will be heavy intensive chip sealing, but unfortunately this year this is all we could get accomplished. There are other roads in the area. We want to try to focus on zones in the city where the work can be accomplished. But we have a lot of failing infrastructure, water lines that need to be replaced, sewer lines that need to be revamped under some of these streets. And so we just weren't able to get that much overlay work done this year under the TBD. So with that, I can stand for questions.
Okay, I want to make sure we have no input from our public regarding this subject. Okay, none. Then we'll turn to council. And I see we have Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bridges. I'm sorry, this is your last meeting officially. Who's going to oversee? Because usually you've kind of kept tabs on this, and if something came up in the project that the city needed to maybe repair or do something before, because you don't want to tear up good asphalt that's been laid down. So who's going to oversee once March comes? Do you know?
Yeah, and the city is blessed. They've got a great staff. Rick Fackemer, our street supervisor, does a really good job pre-planning this. He's already pre-planned things 3 years out in advance. Unfortunately, some of that had to change because of the new process the county wants to do. So Rick's, has a vast amount of knowledge on what needs to be done. Jack Smith, our construction inspector, works closely with Rick, and as well with Jackie at the Island County, their project manager. So, and then of course Alex Warner, he's still in my office, a licensed professional engineer, and we got him involved in it as well last year. So, I'm confident the city's going to, going forward, the project's going to be in good hands. Those folks know what they're doing. It's really fun to work with folks that we're all on the same wavelength, and when they identify a project, they usually have a solution for it. They bounce it off of me, and it's 99.9% times the same solution I would have come to at the same time. So the city's blessed in that regard. So.
Okay, thank you for the information, and thank you for your leadership, and wishing you well in your new adventure, you and your wife. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Okay, any Councilor Wiesner.
Well, Mayor, seeing no other comment from the rest of the council, and I got to say, I know this worked out to be a really good deal for us last year, and the fact that we ended up doing more street work than we had contracted for. So great job, Mr. Bridges, and yes, you'll be sorely missed. So I hate to see you go, but I would like to go ahead and make the motion to authorize the mayor to sign the interagency agreement with Island County Provide Services for the 2021 TBD project and the 2021 street overlay project for the city of Oak Harbor.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second that reads exactly like the recommended action in the packet. A motion by Councilor Wiesner, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing no other input or questions, all in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
So that passes unanimously. We've got 6 hands and 1 eye. Good.
Mayor, can I just say one last thing?
Please do, Jim.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the council, and the mayor, and the great staff at Oak Harbor for my short time I was there. I think we did some good work. I know there'll be good work done after I'm gone. It's been my pleasure to serve the community, to serve the council. This TDD, it was a big deal to get it passed. It's going to be a wonderment to the folks that it's going to affect their lives going forward. Again, it's been my pleasure to work for you folks, and I really appreciate my time there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. We'll still see you at the workshop next week, though, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks. Okay. With that, we'll move on then to our first of 3 items regarding the arts, the area of the arts. Our first item this evening is Arts Commission Resolution 2109, authorizing a professional services agreement with Patrick McVay for the Acorn sculpture project and approval of said PSA, professional service agreement. So I think this evening we have our Parks Operations Manager, Jesse Ott, to present this. Jesse, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Screen share here. Just getting this set up here. Okay. Thank you. Good evening. The purpose of this agenda bill is to authorize a professional services agreement with Pat McVay for the Acorn sculpture project and approval of said PSA. Here's a snapshot of the history of this project dating all the way back to 2015. So we've cited a few potential options for the placement of this piece, including the site of the original Gary Oak tree, or potentially closer to the post office near a very beautifully carved bench right over here. So that will require postmaster approval if we choose to proceed. So this resolution authorizes a PSA with Pat McVay for $15,000. Exhibit A authorizes a 10% deposit in case the wood is not be able to use as the project intended. Really just in case there's too much soft wood once Pat starts carving into it. So our recommended actions here are to move to approve Resolution 2109, authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement with Pat McVay for the creation of the Acorn sculpture project. And move to authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement. Do we have any questions?
I guess before we turn to council, make sure we've got nothing from the public on this item, okay? And so it looks like, yes, looks like we have Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, Mr. Ott, and glad to hear your presentation. Has anyone kind of gotten the feeling from the postmaster if, in order to put it by that really nice bench, that they would go for it? Or is this just pie in the sky?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, just a little bit. So in cooperation with the Gary Oak Society and Laura Reniger and I, if council chooses to proceed tonight, we will then start reaching out to the postmaster. So we've had some very preliminary reaching out that seems promising, but we haven't been able to come back with specifics, but it does look promising.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Any other council?
I have a question, Mayor.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, Councilor Wasker.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Yep.
Oh, okay, thank you. I had a question, Mr. Ott. So the Acorn, I think, is beautiful, would be owned by the city of Oak Harbor, I'm assuming. And I do agree. I think it's neat there by the post office where the original tree was. But you know, heaven forbid something happened to the post office, or I don't imagine that happening anytime soon, but way in the future if it did, could the Acorn be moved, or if there was another location that was chosen, or if the post office decides, you know, that they don't want this on their spot there, can it be moved, or another location if we find one be chosen for it? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So yes, the post office sites are just some of the ones we've been talking about throughout this process that seem desirable at the beginning, but yes, it shouldn't be installed in a way that it wouldn't be able to be moved. So if anything were to happen, or we, for whatever reason, decide to change sites, I think that's completely doable. And yes, as we proceed, we'll probably even be able to bring more site options to council for their approval.
Yeah, and to add for that a little bit, Blaine Oborn, City Administrator, we would keep ownership of it, and that's why we'd work on an agreement with them.
Okay, any other questions? Motions? Yes, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, my cat just knocked over the, am I still here? Sorry.
You are. We can hear you.
Okay. Sorry about the cat. I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move to adopt resolution 21-09.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2109. Motion by Councilor Heisen, second by Councilor Servadius. All in favor, please raise your hands.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Okay. Thank you. So it looks like one more resolution, or one more motion regarding this.
I can go ahead and
Okay?
make that one.
Councilor Heisen?
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the professional services agreement with Patrick McVay for the Acorn sculpture project for an amount not to exceed $15,000.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Motion by Councilor Heisen, second by, just in the nick of time, Councilor Servadius. And it reads exactly like the motion in the packet, the second motion. So all in favor, please raise your hands.
Aye.
Okay, that passes, again, that passes unanimously. Okay, well, thank you, and again, welcome Jesse Ott. And we're going to move on to item number 9B, which is Arts Commission Resolution 2107, authorizing the expenditure of creative arts funds for the installation of and designing the location for the sculpture piece known as the Joseph Kinnebrew Sculpture Collection, Temple Blue. And again, I think we have our Parks Operation Manager, Jesse Ott, for this item. Jesse?
Thank you, Mayor. Share my screen. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. The purpose of this agenda bill is authorizing the expenditure of creative art funds for the installation of and designating the location for the sculpture piece known as the Joseph Kinnebrew Sculpture Collection, Temple Blue. Here's a brief history of the project, including recommendation for installation, cost from our Arts Commission, and site recommendation from our Parks Board. So this resolution authorizes the repairs and painting already spent on the pieces in the amount of $10,000. So this is a photograph of the piece prior to the work done on it. Here it is out in the yard waiting for install with our city colors. And okay, and so, and then also these are just the installation costs for the piece. Engineering by Alpine Engineering LLC, concrete pad, and staff, crew, and archaeologist time. And so the park board had recommended a park site at the State Route 20, the corner of State Route 20 and Northeast Coochie Street in the Pocket Park. So that's this area right here. It's on a piece, a remnant piece of the old Highway 20. And I think it would be a really big beautification for that site there in front of the old Office Max. And I'll stand for questions.
Okay, no input from the public regarding this. Then we will then move to council regarding the Temple Blue. Council questions, input. Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. That's an interesting little pocket park. It's kind of across from my office. I often look across there and there's a table and you might see someone sitting there. So I think art would certainly help dress it up some more. And it's well supported. I was curious, Mr. Ott, do we have any idea the other four or the other three pieces then? It's nice to have them somewhat congruent and near each other. Do we know where those might go?
Your text.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, so right now we have siting for Temple Blue. And so the other piece correct me if I'm wrong, Blaine, but I don't believe that we have proposed siting. I think we were pursuing a potential sculpture park. But as of yet, I think this is the only piece that has siting currently. Is that correct?
There's 3 other locations that we're working on and 3 other pieces part of the Kinnebrew. This is the only one we're prepared to do tonight. And I think we kind of gave an overview at one of the workshops where they kind of talked about the other 3 locations. One of them was off-site. Meditation's probably the next in line, and then there's one that's slated to go in at possibly at Flintstone Park, and then the other one's up off of Fakima, the property up there. But we're focusing on this one and kind of picking these off at one at a time and dealing with them. So this is the first one ready, and then we'll probably work on meditation next, and then work on in that order.
So we have acquired all 4 pieces, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, we do have all the pieces.
And do we anticipate then, I didn't realize it was going to cost, I mean, I know this is the arts fund. I didn't realize it would cost quite so much just to refurb these pieces. I know they're big pieces. Are they all in similar shape then? They're basically
they're in
blasted or rust treated and then re-enameled?
Yes. Yeah, so right now, I think we have one piece that we still need some significant work on, but and one of them would go in for powder coating, but the other 2 I think are ready to roll.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Servatius. Councilor Goebel.
Thank you, Mayor. This question's for Jesse. I was curious, as a new council member, what is the park board's, usual vetting process for selecting a location for art? I'm just considered as a public piece of art. I'm just curious how you guys kind of go about deciding where to put them.
So this is my first foray into this with our Parks Board, but I would say generally they're looking at, safety is probably one of the first ones that they're looking at. We want to make sure that a lot of these pieces will end up having, potentially some kids climbing on it and that type of thing. So we're always looking at safety and site appropriateness as far as safety is concerned. And then, I think starting just to look and see whether the park board feels it fits the space, whether or not that space, could be beautified with a piece of art, whether or not the art would stand out and, be something that would beautify the park. And so I think in general, not to speak for the park board, but I think they're just generally looking at what would be appropriate at the site and what would just add value to the space and the recreation that we have in these parks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Jesse, nice job. I know you mentioned this is your first involvement, and so far you're doing just great. I know that it's a little bit new to you, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. And I never added the recommended action, so we moved to approve the resolution not to exceed $25,000 for the repairs, painting, installation, and designating the location for the sculpture piece known as Joseph Kinnebrew Sculpture Collection Temple Blue.
Any other questions or input? Councilor Servatius?
Without being redundant, I would move to approve Resolution 21-07 and the rest of the text exactly as it reads in our packet and Mr. Ott just recited.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Council. We have a motion to approve Resolution 21-07 as presented in the packet. Motion by Councilor Servatius, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. All in favor, please raise your hands or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. So thank you, council. So we have one more item in this section. I've been notified that we do have an expected action that needs to happen back in, what was that?
Item 6A.
Item number 6A. So I'm sorry to do this, but our city attorney has notified me that we were needing an action, and this is the annexation. Would council like to do that now, or would you like to go on to item 9C and then come back to that? And
I'd say now.
okay, thank you. So item 6A was the intent to commence annexation, and our city attorney Grant, did you want to remind us what you're looking for?
Yes, Mayor, I'd be more than happy to. Just by way of a little more background on the annexation process, especially for any council members that haven't gone through an annexation, what was before you tonight is the very first step in the process of annexation. And while there's more than one way that property can be annexed under state law, the one that's before you is probably the most popular, and it's commonly referred to as the 60% annexation process. But what was before you tonight was the initial step, which requires a request or a notice of intent by the property owners that represent 10% of the assessed value of the property, and the state law requires a meeting to be held. And even though they were not able to be a part of this meeting tonight, they did want this to go forward to you. And so the action that would be before the council would be to authorize moving forward to the next step, which is to authorize circulation of a 60% petition. Well, you have one property owner, that's a no issue kind of a situation because they represent 100%. But if there are other properties that you want to include and you have the exclusive right to geographically modify an annexation to include other properties, then they need to circulate that petition, the 60% petition, to the other property owners. And so I think what the staff recommendation was to add 2 parcels immediately to the west of the good property, and that would constitute the new boundary. So in order to have the city go forward with this annexation, I believe that the action that should have been requested of the council is to move to accept the annexation request, geographically modify the area to include the 2 properties to the west, to require the adoption of the industrial zoning, to require the properties to share city indebtedness, and to circulate an annexation petition, which would be the 60% petition. The summary of that action is on your screen, and there should have been a request to ask you to take that action tonight.
Okay, I misread that. I'm sorry. I was trying to, at the time, wasn't aware that we really needed a motion there. It sounds like we do. So, Councilor Servadius, I see you've got your hand up.
I think Mayor Pro Tem was in front of me.
Let's go then with Mayor Pro Tem. I wasn't looking close enough. Mayor Pro Tem Munz?
Thank you, Mayor. Either way, I move to accept the annexation request and geographically modify the area to include 2 properties to the west and allow applicants to circulate an annexation petition and require the adoption of industrial zoning and require the annexed properties to share the city indebtedness.
I'll second that. Have a question.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second, and the motion reads exactly like was presented to us in the packet. And that motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Munns and second by Councilor Servadius. So we'll turn to the council for questions or input. Councilor Servadius?
Mr. Kamak, probably, or maybe Mr. Weed, I'm looking at page 46 in our packet. It's Mr. Good's, hopefully it's Good, not Goody, I don't know. Mr. Good's letter with his intent to proceed with annexation, and he signs it, and it's dated 1/31/2019. Is that when this process started? Because we talk about in the first page there's 60 days, and I'm curious, the process, if he wants to go out, he or she, I think it's he, wants to go out and talk to those other property owners to the south of Gun Club Road, does this start a 60-day clock right now, or what are the timelines from here forward? And I guess let me define that a little bit better. We're talking about just his property and the two parcels or that section directly to the west, but he implied that he wants to go talk to the people to the south as well, possibly. So timelines, what do we anticipate happening from here if we move forward with this?
I think I can help with the answer to most of that question, Councilmember Servadius. I don't know the history in terms of why the initial request was clear back in 2019. It could have something to do with getting their ducks lined up in terms of what their plans for the property are. But if there is still an intent to talk to property owners to the south, that should be done before the council authorizes a 60% petition to go forward, because then it would need to be geographically modified to include those properties. I'm not sure if Mr. Kamak is available, but perhaps Mr. Cool knows whether the Goods wanted to still explore the properties to the south, or whether they're simply okay with having their own property or the two parcels that are immediately to the west be included in the annexation.
Council, I can answer that. I think the Goods are only talking about the two parcels to the west at this time. I don't know that they've been engaged at all with the parcels to the south of Gun Club Road. So we would probably have to hold off and talk about it later if that was something that needed to be contemplated, if it would hold everything up. I would assume you'd probably want to wait.
All right, thank you. So essentially, if we move forward as presented, does that, are there any other timelines for this coming back to us then?
The answer to that is yes. The next two important steps would be first to prepare the 60% petition, get the signatures of the Goods and the property owners to the west, and also to commence discussions about an annexation agreement. And the next step before council would be to schedule the matter for a public hearing for the 60% petition, which is an opportunity where there's notice for the public to weigh in, separate and apart from any future development proposal. So it's another stop along the way. And only after a 60% public hearing has been held can the council consider taking further action. And I'm assuming that this annexation does not invoke the jurisdiction of the Boundary Review Board. So if it does, then it would have a stop off there as well. But I'm assuming that it's small enough where it does not. And then the last step in the process would be for the council to adopt an ordinance finalizing the annexation and approving an annexation agreement. And if I've missed anything there, Mr. Cool, please please do add to that.
No, it's very thorough.
Thank you both. Mayor, I'm happy to move if there are no further questions.
I think we've got a motion and a second. Now,
So thank you. For the clerk's reference, I'm looking at page 70 in our packet. I move to accept the annexation request and geographically modify the area to include 2 properties to the west and allow applicant to circulate an annexation petition and require the adoption of industrial zoning and require the annexed properties to share city indebtedness.
say, so I think that motion was already made by Mayor Pro Tem. And I
Oh,
gave,
sorry.
and then I gave you credit.
You're
for,
right.
I gave you credit for seconding it. So
You're right, because I wanted to add a question. Sorry.
no problem.
Let's move on.
No problem. So if any other council input or questions, and if there aren't, I will ask you to raise your hands or say yay if you're in favor.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, it looks like we have, is that, okay, we have 6 aye, or 1 aye and 6 yeses. So that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much for your patience, and thank you for allowing us to go back to that this evening. This next item, number 9C, Arts Commission proposed acquisition of the Angel of Creativity sculpture. I will introduce this item as it is being brought forward to City Council for action sooner than it normally would be. Typically, a proposed Art Commission project would be presented at a workshop and go through various levels of vetting at the staff, Arts Commission, and Parks Board prior to being presented to City Council for action. However, due to the extensive scope and community impact of this piece, I am asking Council to give a definitive direction to staff on whether or not to proceed with the project. The sculpture was introduced to the Arts Commission and Parks Board in 2019, but at that time it was not available as it was being given to the city of Bellingham. But we were told about it here at that time. The artist's estate has since withdrawn the offer to the city of Bellingham. I was contacted by representatives of the Arts Commission and Richard Nash about this project and heard a presentation from the group on January 29th. I asked staff to provide an initial assessment and their concerns, if any, which were presented to City Council as part of your agenda packet for this meeting. Richard Nash from Sculpture Northwest and Roderick Gagnon, the Arts Commission Chairman, will give a 5-minute presentation on the Angel of Creativity sculpture, after which Parks Operation Manager Jesse Ott will give the staff presentation. After the staff presentation, I will take questions from City Council and direct as appropriate. I will then ask Council to take action on one of the 3 options listed in your recommended action section, or your own motion or action if you choose. Let me see. I think at this point then we will turn to Mr. Nash and Mr. Gagnon for your presentation, please.
Thanks, Mayor. This is Roderick. Just first say this is an incredible opportunity for the city of Elk Harbor. Richard really heading us up as a member of Sculpture Northwest. I'm going to let him go ahead and give you the background and the opportunity. Richard?
Yes. Am I?
Yes, we can hear you. Well, now I can't. I think you're muted now.
Now am I okay?
Okay, I think you are now, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, this is not my forte, so bear with me. And S&W earlier this weekend sent out an email addressing many of the concerns that were in the packet, and I hope that those were helpful in providing some clarity in the direction that we hope to go for the donation. Rather than go through all those comments that were made in the packet, what I've chosen to do is give kind of a bio and a chronology of how we got to where we are right now. George F. Drake, who was born in 1930, was an altruistic individual, a Korean War veteran who spent time engaged in orphanage relief, a commitment that he continued to support throughout his life. He was named an honorary citizen of Korea for his work there. Later, he became an associate professor at Western Washington University with a PhD in sociology. He created the Big Rock Garden Nursery to become Big Rock Garden Park in Bellingham to provide opportunities for disabled youth, and was the spearhead for many beneficial changes in the community. One of his passions is the visual arts, in particular sculpture. He was fluent in Spanish, the result of another altruistic endeavor in Colombia, South America. With his keen interest in sculpture plus his language skills, George ended up in a close relationship with world-renowned Mexican artist Sebastian. In 2010, his friendship spawned an exhibition in Bellingham of 16 of the large sculptures by Sebastian, which then toured Canada before returning to the US. George founded the nonprofit Sculpture Northwest in 2013. SNW's goal was to focus on bringing public art into the Northwest communities of Whatcom, Skagit, San Juan, and Island counties. The Angel of Creativity is a sculpture by Sebastian that George purchased at cost from his friend. It was to be his final gift to Bellingham. While George was alive, Bellingham proved to be difficult to work with in spite of earlier successes. Location was one of the stumbling blocks. George decided to use SNW, Sculpture Northwest, as a platform for offering the sculptures to the other cities in the 4 counties. Therese Kingsbury and myself, both members of the organization, saw this as an opportunity to bring the sculpture to Whidbey Island. Oak Harbor had recently completed a beautiful park on the bay with contemporary architecture. It was a perfect fit. We invited George to Oak Harbor to see the site. He was very pleased. The 37-foot tall piece was shipped to Bellingham last July. Unfortunately, George passed away at the age of 90 the following August. At that time, Al Zimmerman, as executor of George's estate, was in the process of giving Bellingham one last try to accept the piece. It proved to be challenging, and Al decided to once again to offer the $500,000 sculpture to Oak Harbor. In closing, George considered himself a part of the 4 counties, and in this respect has a connection with Island County. We believe he would be very pleased to have his last and largest endeavor a part of the Oak Harbor and the Windjammer Park landscape. Also, I wanted to mention in passing that Lake Oswego in Oregon is a smaller community about our size. And they have built quite a supportive network for the arts there, and it's actually become a pretty good part of their actual programming for the entire city. And let's see, because of the information that was sent out to the council and the mayor's office, I will take any questions regarding that at this point. Thank you.
So does that conclude then your presentation, Richard? You and
yes, it
Roger?
does. Yeah, and I wanted to ask if I was kind of curious about the email that were sent out with trying to answer some of the questions in the packet. Can that be included as a part of the record?
If an email was sent, it's potentially on the record at this point, I would say.
Okay, did everybody see that email with the packet amendments?
So
or was that?
we're gonna send it to council. It looks like a couple have given a thumbs up that they have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think
Good.
what we'll do then at this time is I want to thank. Oops, I'm sorry. that was, cancel that. I will move this now to Jesse Ott, our Parks Operation Manager, to give the staff presentation. And again, I know, Jesse, this is kind of new to you, and I'm sorry about that, but we're going to ask you to say, you know, if the staff has concerns or whatever we'd like to hear from you at this point.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, I will share my screen. Okay, so thanks, Richard, and thanks, Roderick. Good to see you tonight. Thank you. So the purpose of this agenda bill is to give staff direction regarding the Angel of Creativity sculpture. So here's some background information. Back in 2019, Mr. Nash gave presentations to the Arts Commission and the Park Board regarding the piece. Again, at that time, that piece was slated to go to Bellingham. The Arts Commission presented to the Park Board at our last meeting on February 8th, asking for a site recommendation at Windjammer Park. After much deliberation, the Park Board voted to table the acquisition of the sculpture pending Mr. Nash return with proposals for other locations besides Windjammer Park. So this slide shows some of the potential risks and costs that council may want to consider. So basically, including the lack of any original structural engineering documents. That's something that we've been advised to make sure that we review before accepting anything. And so the structural engineering designs, you know, just things like the status of the welds, whether or not the welds are sound behind filler and paint, that type of thing. And a lot of times a piece this large would come with a packet that would kind of assure us of, you know, whether or not it had been welded by certified welders, that type of thing. So some of these, actually, Richard was able to address a little bit. It doesn't sound like it's been installed at another site before. And we do, it sounds like there is some level of existing aesthetic damage of some type. Could just be to the paint, but we don't know the extent of it at this moment. And the liability coverage. So most of the art pieces we treat similar to a playground with a high level of liability for insurance purposes and legal purposes. Some of the other potential risks, you know, just the floodplain. So we'd have to do the floodplain permit. The high wind, you know, that gets brought up a lot. You know, we've seen just regular light poles blow over in the wind. So we want to make sure that it can withstand that. Saltwater, vandalism, cleaning, and maintenance. You know, we've gotten questions about seagulls, how often it needs to be painted. I know it's red. And so just some of that, a lot of pieces like this will, you know, kind of have a, you know, a plan showing what type of paint, that type of thing. So the costs to the city are a little bit unknown at this time, but since we haven't actually gone out to bid for any engineering assessments yet, so we've heard some estimates from Sculpture Northwest and the Arts Commission, but in the past we've had overruns on art projects and that type of thing. So cost is just difficult to guarantee if we don't have the estimates yet. Also, that city has a bidding, procurement, and contracting process that we have to follow as a public entity for public property. So then we get into the public sentiment. So public sentiment about art is just always a hot button issue. And a piece of that size and that impact, it'll really be kind of the centerpiece of Windjammer Park and potentially Oak Harbor. So typically we have the level of input that's done with the scoping of a design of a park, like what's done at Windjammer Phase 1 or a process like Harbor Heights.
Jesse, you want to go to the next slide?
And if council chooses to proceed, some of the other arts and park project has the possibility of moving to a lower priority to the time this project will require. So here we go on to some more information about public sentiment. So we've got a sentiment overview and a Zen City insight. And so basically the insight, from what I understand about Zen City, it kicks us out kind of an informational report if there's some kind of significant data it finds. And so I know we're going to go over more public comment at the end, so I'll save that. Okay, so on to the potential next steps. So option 1 would be move to proceed. Staff would get 3 estimates on an assessment of the piece. Assessment contract would be brought to council for approval. If a piece is determined sound and the council wishes to proceed, ordinance to assess the gift would be brought to council. An agreement with the estate of the artist would be brought to council. Park board would be asked to make their official recommendation for placement. Staff would also get 3 estimates on the initial engineering of the piece with known location, and recommendation on location and approval of initial engineering contract would be brought to council. Further council action would be needed as the project developed, but these are the initial first steps. Option 2 would be move to table. So the item would be brought back to the park board for further consideration, and it would be brought back to council after park board recommendation or lack thereof. And options 3 would be move to decline at this time. Thank you letter from the mayor to the estate of the donating artist for the offer, not brought back to park board, or no further, where there's no further staff time spent. And now I believe we have a review of public comment received. Oh, sorry.
Thank you,
Didn't go to the
Jesse.
Option 3 there for you.
So I think then at this time, I'm going to turn to our city clerk. We do have some public comment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The city received a number of comments from the public regarding this agenda item. Comments could be made by using the city's online website comment form for city council meetings, or by email to the city clerk prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting, or by leaving a voicemail after 5 p.m. on the Friday preceding the meeting and prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting. All comments submitted to the city using these methods are included in tonight's presentation. Due to the volume of comments received, those comments will now be displayed on screen and were included as well as an attachment to the meeting record. All comments have also been provided to the City Council, and we'll display those now.
So who's? Okay.
Mayor, that concludes the public comments received.
Okay, so that concludes the public comments that were received. And I think at this point, we will turn to council and start with Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Can't hear you. There.
Mayor, this is, thank you.
There you
This
go.
is a question for Mr. Nash.
Yeah, they are here, so they remain to answer questions. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me, Mr. Nash?
Yeah, he can.
He can, okay. There was an email from Teresa Kingsbury that the estate is going to pay for the engineering, the installation, and all of that is needed, that they're only looking for like $35,000 from the city to have this place. Is this correct or not, or what's
Yes,
the deal?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, yes, it's absolutely correct. I'm sorry that I didn't realize, I thought that my comments that were sent out earlier would be more inclusive, but yeah, may I explain briefly how this whole thing will work? Okay, right now what we have set up is we have engineers in place, we have the geotechs in place, we have our PIN people in place for driving in the pins. We've talked with all sorts of people about the project itself. We have someone going up to inspect the sculpture to make sure that it's sound. We have put in a lot of time and effort to making sure that the Parks Department would be able to help us with it, but we weren't going to be taking time away from the Parks Department itself. We wanted to get $35,000 from the Arts Commission to help out with some of the funding, but by and large, an outfit called Ram Construction up in Bellingham have the sculpture stored up there. They will be doing a lot of the project itself once we get the engineering done and the geotech work done. So, and we're set up with, and the estate will handle most of any of the additional monies above the $35,000.
Okay, so Mayor Pro Tem, you're on mute. Can you unmute? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem's unable to unmute.
Okay, I can do it now. It keeps
There we-
saying that the host has to unmute me, and I can't seem to do it by myself.
Okay.
Mr. Nash, that is great that is all planned, but does the city staff know about this company? I mean, you need to have a business license to operate in the city, and you've heard the questions from Mr. Ott, but they need to go over those people's qualifications, I believe. Mr. Ott could probably answer that, but I mean, that does lift a big albatross off their shoulders, but there's some legal ramifications, and I don't know what they all are. It sounds fabulous, but there would have to be some meeting of the minds to also, I know you've done a lot of homework, they kind of need to meet with them to know what's going on, but thank you for that explanation about.
Okay, so.
I'd like to get in line, Mayor, too, if I could. I just can't raise my hand.
Okay,
Just whenever
great.
you're ready for me.
Great. I'll go to Councilor Servadius.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I'm going to just be very straightforward. I wholeheartedly support taking on this endeavor and trying to make this work. I've seen a lot of agenda bills in my time, and I was a little distressed reading this one, especially if you've read the email that Teresa Kingsbury sent out on Valentine's Day, 2/14. When I went back and looked at the email, it was only sent to council members, but hopefully by now the mayor and or clerk or city administrator have a copy of that so that it's included in the record. It goes through and it really corrects a lot of either misstatements or misunderstandings, I think, about this whole process. And I know the mayor started off saying we kind of short-circuited or sped up this process, not short-circuited, but maybe sped it up a little bit because of how things have proceeded with Bellingham and then passing on that and the unique opportunity to get a hold of this piece. But when I read this agenda bill, normally we have pros and cons, and this one to me just felt incredibly negative. It felt like there was a lot of cons and next to no pros. And I think as you read some of these comments, I know there were some that started off on social media, and that's always interesting because people, it could be any topic, and they'll have a strong opinion without even reading the article. But to read the ones that were in our packet and were just portrayed on the screen, they make a lot of great points. Obviously, yes, there's Dutch heritage to this town. There's Irish heritage. Before all of those folks, there were Native Americans. And I realize that art is very subjective. And this piece in no way precludes, as the one gentleman said, precludes a possible windmill someday. We've talked about lots of possibilities of where a windmill could go. I still maintain that one of the best places for that might be as the ball fields move to Harbor Heights. That pocket park, that would be a great place for a tribute windmill. It'd be a great place for a sculpture park in general, as the Arts Commission continues to acquire pieces where those ball fields are down there. But if you have not read that email from Therese, please do take, I'm happy to make a 5-minute recess if we need to make sure everyone's read that email and those high points. It's a big park down there. And whether it was, I know the executor and the estate would like it to be placed on the waterfront. There's a whole lot of park down there. I continue to think about the whole northwest corner of the park, the main entrance of the park up there somewhere. It's a very tall, thin sculpture. It's not going to obstruct any views when you consider the RV park and the poplars that were down there. People may have forgotten, but you couldn't even see the water really because of the poplar trees. And once those came down, people were like, oh my gosh, I can see. Well, there's still plenty of room near that main entrance up there somewhere between the, I don't know what we call it, the main entrance, it has a name, the sloped roof, and over towards where the madrone trees are. I think it could go in there. I think it could go on a roundabout. We talked about putting a roundabout on the windmill if we ever did a realignment of the, where Bayshore and Beeksma Drive come together. It could go out maybe in the very main roundabout, and that might be 5 years down the road or 7 years down the road if WASDOT puts one there where Pioneer and 20 intersect. There's lots of locations for it. Flintstone was mentioned. I think Flintstone would be a phenomenal location as that park becomes its own little hub and gets revived when we have the Portland Loos down there that replace those old bathrooms. Portland Loos are very, very modern looking. This is a contemporary sculpture. Might fit great down there. I was just amazed at the amount of, and there are some valid points to consider here, engineering, safety, liability. But when we talk about a $176 permit or an $86 permit for a piece of art that's valued, I know some of these folks say up to $500,000. Let's say it's $100,000. We're talking about a couple $100 in permits when we're talking about a couple $100,000 in donated art. Yes, there will be ongoing costs. A seagull is going to poop on the artwork. Seagulls do that, especially if the artwork is outdoors. Is that a reason not to get it? Of course not. I'm trying to think, I don't even know what some of the other objections were, that it's too big, it's too tall. The email addresses a lot of those concerns. Think of a poplar tree being planted. A poplar tree would grow, one single tree would easily eclipse this piece of art. So I wholeheartedly support it, whether it's a modified option 1, which I think could really just be striking in our packet the last 2 sentences or giving it a dollar amount, as Ms. Munn's kind of hinted at. Maybe there's a top end of this, or I know Therese also in her email put together kind of an option 4. So I'll wait to hear what my peers have to say, but I definitely think there's a way to move forward. And last but not least, when I look at the list of folks that have wanted to get involved, from professional engineers to construction companies, it reminds me of an old-fashioned barn raising, like when we made the boardwalk that runs down in front of the condos. You know, there are people that say that could never be done, but there are a lot of community volunteers that came together and donated time and labor that built that boardwalk, and that was one of the first projects we saw when we got here. So I think there's a very unique and special opportunity for Oak Harbor to add a very impressive and world-renowned piece of art, or at least a piece of art by a world-renowned artist. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Servatius. We'll move on to Councilor Mack.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I also wholeheartedly support artwork. I think it's a really unique opportunity for this sculpture. I have some concerns. I have some reservations. Safety. We need to have the proper people check this out. High winds are prevalent in the park area. Also, I have concerns about the maintenance. I'm not sure who is going to be maintaining something like this, and that's important because it will take maintenance, whether it's painting, cleaning. I'm not sure if there is any specific attachments to this accepting this piece of artwork. If we're obligated to do certain things like light the structure, so much lighting on it, and of course, last but not least, the liability. Of course, that depends upon how secure it's built and how it's anchored and that type of thing, which it sounds like the Parks Department is on that. Based on, as Councilman Servatius says, our options here in our packet versus some new information that has been sent to us, I would like a little bit more flexibility on some of these options, in addition to an additional number 4 option. You know, I do believe and I understand time is of the essence here. And so with some of those concerns, I think this is a question for Mr. Ott. Has there actually been a stake put in the ground where this would be a proposed siting? In other words, I'm really curious as to, would this get in the way of any open space or for the kite flyers and so on and so forth? And last but not least is, yes, it's been a long 5 days hearing from constituents, and a lot of them in person, wanting the windmill and where to put it. Is this going to be in the right location? We do have plenty of space where this sculpture and other pieces can go, but let's think long term. And I think whether it's the sculpture or the windmill or possible amphitheater, that everybody did a nice job designing the park, and it's first class. So let's be cautious of where something is located, because once it's put there, we probably are going to want to leave it there and that type of thing. So I'm just curious to see what everyone else has to say. Thank you.
Jesse, I don't know whether there's, I think there's been a proposed location at least.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Mayor, there is a proposed location, and I know, I think Richard and some of the Arts Commission were down there today trying to scope some other potential sites too. So I know they're looking at sites beyond what was in the photo. They did explain before that what was in the photo that most people have seen with a digital rendering, you know, was just kind of a placeholder to put it into the park. But I don't believe that they were really stuck on one very specific spot.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Councilor Wassinger, thanks for your patience.
No problem, thank you. So I have some more maybe technical questions that I have here. So we talked about the artist, and then now it was owned once by someone else, and now it's owned by his estate, and there's an executor named Al who actually owns the copyrights to this piece right now. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Mr. Nash.
I think, can we unmute Mr. Nash?
There we go.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you meant by, there's no copyright on the piece. It's owned by the it's in the George Drake estate.
Okay,
And Al Zimmerman is in charge of that. And
okay.
so and we also looked at some different spots down below just to answer that question
Okay.
too. So.
Okay, so on the location and the painting and any other things that need to be done to this sculpture and the location, does the city technically get a say in this? Are we going to have full control over this sculpture? And you know, there's a thing, there's moral rights when you have art pieces and artists, and are we going to obtain a waiver of these rights so that we have control over this sculpture and where it goes and what color it's painted and the maintenance on it if it's need to be done? Maybe the city attorney could answer that.
One of the things that I think might be available to the city, and it would take both parties, of course, but that would be to enter into some form of gifting agreement with the estate that outlines all of the terms and conditions under which the city would receive the sculpture and who's responsible for what. There's quite a bit of detail, you know, a devil involved in the detail of working those things out, but I think it would be important for the city to enter into some form of agreement so it's clear what everybody's responsibilities are. And among the things that could be addressed in it are things like engineering and maintenance and all the different things actually that have been discussed tonight. And so that's what I would expect to see the city and staff and I working toward if the council wants to go in the direction of accepting the gift.
Yeah, I can tell you that without knowing those details and knowing, I mean, this is a big sculpture, and if we're not in control of an approval of a site, and I know it's all written down in that email, but the legalities are the legalities of it. I can't support accepting it without knowing those details, if that makes sense. You know, this is something that may need to be worked on by our part. You said there may be some imperfections in it that we have to work on. If we don't have control over that, if we don't have the right to do that from the state, I'd like to get those things figured out before I would vote on approving this. If even doing maintenance on it, anything, if it has to be taken down, you know, if you read the legalities of art and artists, it's something that I'm just not, with something like this size, I'm just not willing to support at this point until I know those details. So I'm going to wait until I can get some of those legalities, and I want to know the copyright. I want to know who, if this is used in a picture because it's in a picturesque background, if this is used in a painting, a greeting card, whatever, is that owned by the estate? Or is that owned by us? You know, I want to know more of the legalities. I know this artist pieces are very beautiful and used in a lot of picturesque scenes. So I just would like to know those details before I can support it. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wassinger. Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Wassinger. Those were some really, really good points that you made. I appreciate that. I want to start by saying that I wish we got so much heartfelt public comment for every single agenda item. I don't know why we don't, but thank you to everybody who took the time to email, to call, and even to post on social media. I mean, it's just all of the feedback. We do consider it. I was initially on the fence about this. I love all things public art. The more diverse, the better. I think the sculpture itself is striking. I do think its size is intimidating in terms of is it feasible for us to pull, to pull this off? If somebody wanted to give me a giraffe, obviously I would be thrilled, right? But do I have the means to take care of a giraffe? So, there's lots of things to consider. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't look into it. So I'm concerned about the city having the bandwidth to take on a project of this magnitude, not just in terms of finances, but in terms of staff time, because these things do take a lot of behind the scenes time and effort. So I don't want to reject it out of hand, and I don't want to just accept it with some blind optimism. I definitely am in favor of exploring the feasibility of this a little more. Something like this would be amazing, especially near the waterfront. So thank you to the Arts Commission, Mr. Nash, Roderick Gagnon, Therese Kingsbury, just all of you on the Arts Commission. Your dedication to the beautification of our city cannot be overstated. I can tell from the emails and the presentations, the hours and hours that you must spend volunteering your time for the city. So thank you. So that's on the record. It sounded like Councilmember Servatius might have like an option 4 motion of some kind. So I won't make a motion, but I am definitely in favor of exploring the feasibility of this a little more, because if we can make it happen, I would love to do that. If we can't, then I'll accept that reality, but I think it's worth looking into. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Heisen. We'll go to Councilor Goebel.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone on the Arts Commission, city staff. I know this has been kind of a quick and crazy agenda item to come up, and I know there's been quite a lot of hard work put into it, so I appreciate that. Thank you specifically to Therese Kingsbury sending out that document the other evening. That was really important to see and read that information and help kind of learn about this incredible opportunity. I wanted to ask a couple questions. The first one kind of builds on that question I asked earlier about how we kind of vet the placement of art. So I wanted to ask too, Jesse, just as a new council member, what is the process with the selection of the actual art piece? Do we involve how much do we involve the community in what we pick? And so I'm kind of curious how that process works.
Okay, well, I'm super new, so I've attended the Arts Commission just to kind of help square away getting a couple of the pieces installed. So that was kind of my role, is to kind of help get that moving and get my crew working on some of the smaller pieces that we can install ourselves. So this is kind of new, so a lot of the art pieces I think that they had been pursuing were not originally going to go into park space. And so, some of these ones that were kind of testing the waters as a pocket park, a trailhead, but this is the big one. And so, right now this is kind of it. There's not a whole lot of, I know the Arts Commission gets the piece, they pursue it and bring it to staff, and we bring it to the council to release the funds. And then as far as the placement, thus far, it just pretty much goes to the park board, and then they make, based on their opinion and best judgment on what they think would go in the site. So I don't believe that we have anything in writing or any, procedure for that. I think this experience is kind of shedding a light on that a little bit, though, for sure. If we're going to be placing more of art in public space, especially the park, I think we do need to work out a little bit more of an inclusion with the park board and because then we can work in more public input and go that route. So yeah, I agree. We've got a little bit of work to do there, but we don't have a formal policy on that as that I understand.
So Councilor Goldberg, you still?
You can jump in, Roderick, if you wanted to add on to that.
And just to clarify your question, you're asking about the process of what art we select, or what the process is for where art gets placed.
The selection of the artwork.
Yeah, so really, it's there is no process there. It's other than any opportunities that are presented to us. And I've been chairing the Arts Commission for 2 years now, and the general line has been any member of the public or a Arts Commission member who presents an opportunity, we pursue that opportunity to see if it's viable. And then if we have it in our budget, we make those recommendations to council. We bring those opportunities to the council to vote on, and we try to coordinate with the Parks Board as best as possible to coordinate a location that will be viable as well.
That's good to hear, because there was a line in our packet, saying that we should be, involving the public the best we can. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job based on the amount of public comment we've received with the article in the paper and whatnot. So I feel like if that's the process we've done, then we've continued doing that. My next question probably could be more towards Grant, but I would like to see this happen. I don't want to ignore this opportunity, but I definitely think we should have some sort of, I was happy you said gifting agreement. I was trying to think of a way to have some sort of, contract, like an escrow account. I don't know if we get into this project and Al Zimmerman of the Drake Estate has agreed to pay anything that exceeds over $35,000, which is an incredible gift that's extremely generous. But philanthropy aside, what if something happens and then they decide to back out? I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable getting into this process without some sort of agreement, so that estate then couldn't potentially put the city in a situation where we're kind of now stuck with paying these other engineers and geotech. So I would like to see this happen. I really like the suggested option 4. There's a couple things I'd maybe like to change to it or add this gifting agreement to it, but can you elaborate, Grant? Is that something that we could get drawn up in a timely manner? Because I know this is a time-sensitive item.
Absolutely. And we do understand that if there is a decision to explore and pursue this further, that the time is going to be of the essence. I think that this is all the first impression for me, so I'm just trying to think it through now. But I think what I would say at this point is that if the estate has made certain or is willing to make certain commitments, we can memorialize those, and we can make those commitments appear in an agreement. Typically, an estate has a limited duration. At some point in time, the estate will be closed and no longer will be an entity that can continue to make commitments. But in the short term, if there's a willingness to provide resources for engineering and placement and other costs, that can be done. Probably the tougher issue I'm thinking off the top of my head is how to deal with the commitments and the issues that the city might have concerns about in the long haul after the estate is closed. And I have some ideas about that, and it's probably going to require some discussions and give and take with the representative of the estate. But the first thing I would do if directed to begin an agreement would be to outline just a list of the deal points that would be important to both parties, and just get the list going, and then have discussions and put the meat on the bones to create an agreement. don't think you can find an agreement right out of the box that's going to address the specifics of all the details that this is going to require. So there's going to be some uniqueness to an agreement and some discussions that have to take place. But near term is probably easier than the long term issues, and that's where we have to have some conversation about how to accommodate everybody's needs as best we can.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then my last question is, does the executor of the estate have a timeline for the installation? I guess a deadline would be a better word. Does he have a deadline?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I think that he wants to definitely move forward with this. He's not unrealistic about the amount of time that it would probably take to do this.
Yeah.
At one point, he was talking about 6 months just to get to the point where we could break ground. So all that is I think, probably about as fast as he figures we're going to be able to go. Mm-hmm. I'd also like to say in that option 4, or that I kind of brought up, it was, I'm sorry here, just a second. What we were hoping to do to kind of get the ball rolling on all this, is we were going to be going up with a qualified inspector, who's our structural engineer, who used to work on ships and worked on planes to check welds. We were going to take him up to where the sculpture is and have him investigate the sculpture in that regard. We've also been down looking at alternative sites, which I think is going to be very doable. It really is a huge park, and we think we can put it in a place that will not be in anybody's way, whether you're a kite flyer or anything like that. And then the other thing that we needed to have done that would really help us go forward with this is to have, we have a geotech named Scott Palmer, who's on the island here, who would come out, and once the site is selected, we would have him drill down and find out what we're up against.
Right.
And once that's done, then we can get engineering completed that makes sense for the geographical area that it's going into. And we'll be able to put in all the support, the pin piles and all those sorts of things that help support the pad.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to make sure that you understood that the footprint on this, even with the concrete, is probably going to be between 12 and 14 feet square. That's it. Mm-hmm. It's a relatively small footprint. It's a linear piece, which means it's just not going to take up a lot of air room either. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, no, yeah, that absolutely helps. I really am in favor personally of option 4, with some language being added about that if we exceed $35,000 in fees, that the executor assumes, the rest of the cost of the project. And I also would like that that it says option 4. I don't know if my fellow council members has that document handy, but it basically lines out that we would accept the gift under these following conditions, and you'd have to meet the first 3 conditions. I would like it to go possibly, you'd have to meet the first 4, possibly 5 conditions, and you add a 5th condition that there's a written gifting agreement or MOU of some sorts that's been approved by city council staff, that we just kind of expand those constituencies, I guess, or contingencies on that option 4. And I think I've probably exceeded my comment time, so I will yield the floor.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Goebel, thank you. We've got 3 other hands here. Let's go to Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I would like to wholeheartedly agree with Councilor Heizon's comments, both involving the public comment. Thank you, public, for weighing in and don't think that you're not heard. I understand this is a two-sided, obviously opinionated type of issue. Secondly, I'd also like to thank Mr. Nash and Roderick and the arts folks for your passion and your time and your dedication. Mr. Nash, of course, is partly responsible for me not having artistic bone in my body. I think I slept through a couple of his classes back in school days. So sorry about that. That's what happens when you sit at the back of class, I guess. But I also then I guess I want to reach out to Mr. Zimmerman and the folks who are bringing us this awesome opportunity and have them not misconstrue the speed by sometimes which government operates as not being appreciative of the opportunity. Because that's certainly not the case. We too are passionate about our due diligence to the community. And therefore, sometimes that turns into, getting the feeling that we're not on board. And I just want to say right now, I'd like to figure out a way to make this work. Okay, so with that said, I have 3 concerns. I think you guys are well on the way to addressing the first 2, and then I think I'm going to offer up a suggestion for the third concern, which has been placed by everybody, and maybe I look at it from a different perspective, and maybe that will help. So first concern I have obviously is structural integrity of the sculpture, and obviously you're taking care of that. That's important to understand what we're getting, and understand that we have a little bit of a track record here, right? We've got a couple of engineering things that have occurred with some other sculptures going around town, that have given us a little once bitten, twice shy. But obviously we want to make sure that the sculpture is safe, and that if the city was to take it on, that it's something that's structurally sound. The second item I have a concern with is location. Quite frankly, the location I have in mind, nobody has suggested, but I'm going to toss it out there. Catalina Park, is a underutilized park. It's well protected from the wind. It has Mailer's Point on one side and the hill on the other side. Excuse me. Winds don't often come directly at that park. I think it'd be fitting. It'd be an angel, saying, best wishes to the seamen heading out. And I think it'd look fantastic as you're coming into our harbor, seeing that next to the marina. We've got the tall sailboats down there and stuff, and I think it would fit well into that very underutilized park. Furthermore, the park is built on a ton of fill that was put there by the Navy when that area was created. The chances of an archaeological find or something down there, I think, is a lot less than we would find down in Windjammer Park. And I will say that I'm apprehensive about placing anything permanently in Windjammer Park without, this phase 2 plan, right? I mean, we did so much planning to get where we're at, and without, I guess, having the rest of that thought out, amphitheater locations and all those other things that we're hoping to see in the next phase of the park. I'm a little apprehensive about that, but Catalina Park was my 2 cents there. So the third item, the big monkey in the room is the money, right? The Arts Commission has done a very good job of taking quite a bit of money that we've saved up over the years. There was quite a while where there was really no activity going on out of that fund, and so some money's got built up, and you've done a fantastic job of buying used pieces and scratching here and there, right, to be able to spend that money. But we're starting to eat into that fairly quickly, so I'm concerned about that. The fact that you guys are willing to cap this at a $35,000 expense intrigues me, because quite frankly, we just don't have a ton of money to spend out of that dedicated fund, understanding that this money's got to be spent for art. And I don't know if people in the community understand that, but the money's in this fund. It's placed in this fund based upon state law. the money must be spent out of this fund for art projects. Okay, so now with that said, you guys sound like you have quite a plan and quite a group of people assembled that may be able to do this work and may be able to do it efficiently and maybe a little inexpensively, right? But then the city comes into play, right? And the problem is the city money, as if it's being expended on engineering. Well, those engineers have to be vetted through the city process. The bids have to be made. Has to go through the city awarding contract to award the contract, unless the contract happens to be under the mayor's allowed budget, right? And there's quite a process involved in that. And of course, it's a public works project, and so it has to be paid under public works wages, etc. Now, if the folks who are supplying the statue or Sculptures Northwest or some other entity were to come in and take all of that work on, because the other thing I'm concerned about, quite frankly, is city staff time. You know, we've got them loaded up with a bunch of other projects. We just got through budget. We have some staff changes going on, you know, and so I want to be realistic there. And if you guys were to take that project on and you guys were to hire the engineers and you guys were to go through that process and we were to handle it similar to other public-private projects where it's all done to the city specifications, obviously the city will be permitting it, the city will be inspecting it, and at some point in time, then the city would take possession of the completely installed statue, that we would pay a fee of $35,000 for the completely installed statue. Then it'd be your project. It wouldn't be the city's project. It'd be a project to benefit the city, and it'd be a project handed over to the city at the end, built to city specifications. That's the logical path I see, right? And I guess, I'd be willing to move this thing forward, conditioned upon my three concerns being addressed. The structural concerns, the location concern. It's important that we have the support of our park board. These are people, volunteers in our city with passion, just like the folks on the Arts Commission. They volunteer their time. We rely upon them heavily to vet these things and to work through these things. We can't spend hours and hours on every subject, and it's important that we let them do their job and come to us with a recommended location, and you guys need to work that out with them, right? And then, like I say, the money thing, we got to figure out how to, you've heard from every counselor, we're concerned about the handing over of the statue. We're concerned about the expense of the statue. We're concerned about the timelines and city staff and all those things. I think there's a way to get there. I think we just have to maybe be a little creative in how we get there. And that's, I'm going to ask you and our staff, our city administrators, sit down and work that out, a way to hopefully get to yes. But those are my three concerns that I would want addressed, and I would conditionally tell staff that I'd be willing to move forward with this, on the condition that those issues get addressed. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. So as I was sitting here, I was trying to type up a modified, option 4. And I'll keep the screen up to see if anyone raises their hands. A couple of thoughts. Appreciate everyone, all my peers' comments. It's always fun to go through that process. For example, Catalina Park, Mr. Wiesner, excellent suggestion. It's one of those things that you don't necessarily think about, but that could be a great location for that. It's nice to have it down more centrally, closer to the CBD, so people are going to shop. But I thought about it, unless they go down Regatta or know how to get down Regatta, they have to go through downtown to get to the marina, essentially. So they'd have to probably go by there anyway. So I typed up 2 potential motions. I'd like to just read them. I'm not making the motion, but I'd like to just throw it out there. It sounds like, in general, most of my peers would support this, knowing that it's safe. Of course, we're not going to do anything that's not engineered correctly and doesn't have a strong foundation. So we want it safe. we want it affordable. It sounds like that magic number for the Arts Commission is the city council kind of wants to support is $35,000 or less. In location, I guess, or locations, I'd like to hear the Parks Board come back with a couple of options because we always like options. So whether that's, Catalina's a great choice. I still like Flintstone. This is just me speaking. And then once again, somewhere that northwest-ish section of Windjammer, phase 2 will be in the center, so we wouldn't really disrupt anything if we stay in the northwest section. So those are my thoughts. So let me read both of these. The first one was a modified option 4. The second one is much simpler, just giving staff some instruction to hopefully come back with something and a date. So the first one reads, I move to explore, and I'll do this slowly. I don't know how to share a screen here. I move to explore accepting the Angel of Creativity sculpture subject to satisfying the following conditions. Final location recommendations from the Parks Board, a list of potential costs to the city, a draft gift agreement from the executor, and a list of qualifications from donors. So that's a more all-encompassing option that I think hits on all of our concerns. Once again, not giving this thing the full green light, but giving staff and the Sculpture Northwest really some marching orders to move forward and do some work. The second one is much simpler. It's just I move to instruct staff to explore in more detail accepting the gift, Angel of Creativity, and address council concerns to be presented at our March 24th workshop. So that gives a little over a month, 5 weeks, for Sculpture Northwest. And I know they're feeling it. They want to make this happen. So I think they're willing to do a lot of the work to get some of the engineering specs. Well, they can't really do them until we have a location, but at least we could get some CVs for these folks so we know their qualifications, the different firms, and have a lot more complete package at that workshop. And then we could probably get a lot stronger green light. So once again, those 3 concerns of it's safe, we've got a location or a couple of locations from the Parks Board that we could narrow in on, and then costs not to exceed $35,000. So there's option 1, which is a little more wordy. Option 2 is just, hey, go to work, please, staff, and bring it back to us on the 24th. I'll pause.
Councilor Servadius, could I get you to make a motion to extend the meeting? We're right at
Thank you, Mayor. I saw
right
that
at 9
earlier, too.
o'clock. That's all.
I move to suspend our rules and extend our meeting time until 9:45 p.m.
Second,
Got a
second that.
Motion and second to extend our meeting time until 9:45 p.m. All in favor, please raise your hands.
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, thank you, Councilor. So I noticed that, okay, Councilor Servadius paused, and I think that Mayor Pro Tem, did you have your hand up for a response? Or?
Yes, sir, I did. Thank you, Mayor.
You bet.
Mr. Nash, in your option 4, if we just use the simpler option 4 to say to be safe, that would cover your geotech and the welder inspection and stuff. We wouldn't have to have, I mean, yours is looks like 3 paragraphs, your option 4, but would that work to have it's not the green light, but council would be voting if there are at least 4 votes to move forward with this project. You said that the estate realizes that it's going to take minimum probably 6 months, but probably longer, but we're operating in good faith with them that we really want this. So can we just use the word safe instead of mentioning all those other little pieces?
Okay, I believe so. I'm representing Sculpture Northwest, not just myself, and so it feels a little awkward for me to give the okay on this, but I may get a very quick message from somebody very soon that will help guide me on all this. Yeah, I think we would just like to keep it going, and Mr. Wasner's idea of us taking over the project, just like we did with the Founders Project. We took over the entire thing and got all the permitting and all the okays from the city. I think that's a really good idea. And I think that and then the Arts Commission could write a check for $35,000 basically to pay for the sculpture that would go back into the SNW funds. I really think that's an excellent idea. So, and I did get a yes from some other people, so I think, yeah, that would work.
So staff has reminded me that the option 4 has not been provided to the public. So that, I guess that's something as we have the conversations and get to a motion of some sort, it'll be something that you propose then tonight. You know, we'll call it whatever, but the option 4 that you're talking about, I think was in some emails back and forth and wasn't provided to the public. So just for clarity and record. So.
Okay.
Then we'll go.
I had another question, Mayor, too, if I could get in line, please. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Councilor Goebel.
I was just wondering if Councilmember Servadius, is it possible for you to put those motions you typed up in the chat? I don't know if we're allowed, but it would be, because I tried to write it down as you said them, and it would just be nice if they were somewhere to look at. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Goebel.
Mayor, if it comes to that time, I have a laptop going, and probably the simplest thing
Okay.
is a pretty low-tech solution. But that's all I've got going at the moment. But I'll go ahead and talk, and we'll come back.
Okay, let's go. Let's go to Councilor Heisen, and then we'll follow with Councilor Wassinger. Councilor Heisen.
I had the exact same question I was going to ask Councilmember Servadius to go back over the wording.
Okay, that's great then. Councilor Wassinger.
Thank you. I guess, my preference would be to hold off, and I agree with Councilmember Servadius in the part of his motion. Again, I don't know all the words exactly, but get some more details on our March workshop setting. I do not feel comfortable being rushed on this. This is a big piece of art in our park that is our center of our community that we have invested a lot of time and money in. And to have such few days and not even and to have these questions, especially the questions I have, more the contract legality questions. I don't understand. Maybe if someone could explain why this has to be rushed. I just don't agree with it. It's not that I don't agree with the art and having the art in the park. It's the process that I'm having trouble with. And the process why, they rescinded this from Bellingham. I'm reading because of a time issue. What is the time? Why such a time crunch? I would like to have more time to get details before I make a decision. I'm not comfortable approving or disapproving this. I'm not even comfortable voting on it until I have a lot of these, like we've all said, location, a true legal understanding of this artwork and who owns it and maintaining it and painting it and having the final say on the location and having all of that, mixed in with this estate that owns it. I'm not comfortable making a rush decision without having a lot of these details ironed out from staff. So I would support more details coming in the March workshop. Those are my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. We'll go to Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. What I would like to suggest is I would like to support Councilor Servadius's option 4, subset B. If Councilor Servadius was in agreement with me that we put that in more of a form of instruction to staff, and we can just quickly go around and get a nod from council and see if all of council is in favor of and instructing staff to keep this moving forward with addressing the concerns that we have in Councilor Servatius's option for sub B. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you,
And
Councilor Wiesner.
I would support providing that instruction to staff.
Okay. I see Councilor Servatius has got his hand up and Mayor Pro Tem. So I'll go to Councilor
Mayor,
Servatius. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem, I was going to hold up the motion and make it to kind of move things along. Do you have a different comment?
I just wanted to check with our attorney that would a head nod work? I mean, it seems that we haven't voted, but the majority wants to move forward. It doesn't mean we're saying you have the green light, but as Mr. Nash has said, they want to check the safety of it before it goes any further. And so that is one of our items. We still have a location, and then the idea of getting a gifting agreement between the estate and the city, and that's going to be a little back and forth so that both sides are satisfied. Do we need a formal motion or just a head nod to give direction to staff to carry this on? And the idea that if this project could work like the founder statue was, that they took care of all the permitting and all that, and then it was given to the city. I just sort of want your take to be sure we're not doing anything out of order.
Thank you, Councilmember Munns. My thought about that question would be that to the extent you can give some detailed direction to staff, it's going to help them do a better job of making progress between now and your next meeting and getting it teed up so you can make commitments that would be binding sooner than later. So whether that comes by way of a formal motion or just by getting a consensus about what direction you want to go, I do think it's important to give as much detail as you reasonably can to staff so they know what they need to be doing between now and the next time that you're meeting about this issue.
Okay, so Councilor Servatius, your second motion?
Yes, Mayor, I'll hold it up. And so once again, I've kept this purposefully generic to allow, I think both staff and Sculpture Northwest have heard our concerns fairly loud and clear. And so I'm going to go with the second motion, which I'll just try and hold up here and hopefully it's legible. To keep it fairly simple, is that legible?
Not for me, but
Not for me.
Let me try and blow it up. It's pretty simple. I'll just read it. And once again, I'm keeping it fairly generic so that staff, I think, has a pretty good idea of what we're looking for. And it sounds like Sculpture Northwest will look into the engineering and some of that stuff already. We're obviously not going to put something up that doesn't comply with our code and is safe. So the motion is, I move to instruct staff to explore in more detail accepting the gift Angel of Creativity and address council concerns to be presented at our March 24th workshop.
Second.
Happy to read it again if you'd like.
so I know our clerk has written it down too, or is completing it now. We have a motion and a second. Would you be able to read it? Make sure it's the same.
I think I have it pretty close, Councilmember Servatius, but please, I wrote it the way I thought I heard it the first time, and now I've made some changes. I move to.
Would you like me to reread it, Julie?
Let's see how close I get, but I'm happy to have you read it again. I move to instruct staff to explore in more detail accepting the gift of the Angel of Creativity sculpture and address council concerns to be presented at our March 24th workshop.
Perfect.
So We have a motion and a second, motion by Councilor Servadius, second by Councilor Heisen. Any other input or questions? Kind of curious if staff, Mr. Ott, any questions?
No,
Okay.
no. The only question I had been thinking about as we were talking, and I didn't want to interrupt the council's discussion, was just bringing up the viability of being able to have all these outside groups do this work and the legality of that.
Okay. Well,
That was kind of the last thing on my my question list. As far as prevailing wage and who's allowed to do.
so we can have that available then potentially, or the options at the workshop. Sounds like we can. Any other council input or questions? Oh, I got a hand up from Councilor Goebel.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to confirm, Councilman Servatius, I like the broadness, so it leaves room for possible more areas to explore. But I just want to confirm that we are all, if we approve this motion, we are agreeing to instruct staff to, not explicitly in the motion, but by that March workshop, that they will come with some sort of list of location options from the park board. We'll have information from the geotech on the possible sites, an engineering report of the integrity of the actual structure, and then a gifting agreement drawn up between the city and the estate. Is that correct? That's kind of what we're all hoping to see in March.
Councilor Servadius.
I have thoughts on that, Mayor, if you'd like.
Yes, please. Councilor Servadius.
I think, Ms. Goebel, probably, I don't know if there should be a Parks Board meeting before then, so it's likely they could come up with some ideas or further define some locations. I don't know about the geotech. It sounds like we need to give them, they're not going to go around just digging holes everywhere. So we'll need to get them a fairly definite one or two locations, and then Sculpture Northwest, I'm assuming, will coordinate with their geotech firm to look at that soil. It sounds like the one thing they can do before then is go up and inspect the welds and get a pretty good idea as far as the structural integrity before March 24th. But I think they will crank up the heat and work with staff to answer a lot of our concerns probably before the 24th.
That was all I needed. Thank you.
Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Nash had his hand up. I just wanted to hear whatever it was he had to say.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to let you know that, yeah, we would just need one site because it would become cost prohibitive to start digging a lot of holes, like Mr. Servatius said. So we will need to come up with a site so that we can do the geotechnical work. And that will, if that's established, then we can go ahead with all the other parts of it, and we'll be able to give you a much more complete report on what it is that we need to do. S&W wants to work with the city. We want to make this as smooth as possible. I never wanted this to sound contentious, and I certainly didn't mean to make it feel like we were rushing it through. You'll have to excuse our enthusiasm for the project. When it came available, we just thought we should start moving forward with it as quickly as possible. Yeah, if we can come up with a location, I'm still going to have to get the geotech in line to come and do the work. It's going to take them a couple of days, and we'll have to get a permit from the city to go out and do that. It shouldn't be very disruptive to the location that we choose. So that means, they'll go in and out, and you shouldn't hardly be able to tell that they were there. But we'll need to do that first. And also, while I've got the mic here, I wanted to thank you guys. There's some good thinking going on here, and there were some things out of the box that I hadn't even considered. So it's been a learning experience for me. Like I said, this isn't my forte, getting on a screen like this and trying to talk with people, but I think it's gone okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are you ready to vote? Looks like you're all in favor. Raise your hands or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, so we've got a motion and staff's got some work to do. And looks like Sculpture Northwest has got some work to do, so a lot of us, so, okay. Thank you much. We are 9:15. We're gonna go on then at this point to item number 10A, which is ordinance number 1920, Model Home Code Draft. I believe this is a draft. Is this for our Development Services Director, David Cool? David?
Okay, thank you, guys. It's been a long night, but I just thought I'd do a quick background on where we've been on the Model Home Code. As you remember from last time, we covered Ordinance 1780, which was where we adopted the last Model Home Code back in 2016. There's been a desire for more flexibility with the Model Home Code, and so consequently, the new code is desired. So moving forward, there's some new code options that we've been exploring. The new code will allow construction of streets, water, sewer, and stormwater at the same time that model homes are being built. Typically, when you're developing a subdivision, you put in the roads, the streets, the sewer, and the water, stormwater, all before you start building homes. But we have the development community would like to do it all at the same time. And so we're constructing a model home code that will allow them to do that. Typically, what we do is we accept all the infrastructure before occupancy. So what happens is we do a final plat, and then we accept all those improvements of the final plat before you can actually occupy any homes. And so that is still the case. This approach will allow more speed and will help the development community to move forward quicker. So some of the specific changes we're talking about doing is the development community, when I talked to them a couple weeks ago, they said if they could get the fire hydrant installed just before the framing is done, rather than before the entire project starts, that would save them a lot of time. And it made sense. If they don't have any wood on the site, why would they need a fire hydrant right away? So we agreed, and I talked to the fire marshal, Mike Buxton, and he's agreed that if you can get the fire hydrant out there on the site and have it be charged and ready to go, once you start framing, then you'll have water on the site when wood starts to go up. And so you could put out a fire if you have water on the site. He will also require a good surface to be able to move an emergency vehicle out there. And so it'll be up to the fire marshal to make sure that gets done. We'll also require performance bonds and restrictive covenants and the hold harmless agreement to make sure that it's all done with safety in mind, to make sure that these properties are not occupied without the proper approvals and proper final plats. So we had a little more development community input today, I think, as you all noticed. So we're currently working to change the bond language in the code, and so the codes that you've seen is currently under revision. And that's why we're holding this study session as part of a regular meeting, because we're moving quite fast and we're trying to move this as quick as possible. So we're scheduling this tonight, and then we have a public hearing coming up on the 23rd at the Planning Commission. So we wanted to touch base with you real quickly before we got to that public hearing. The development community wanted us to change the bond language in the code, and so we've done that in the draft, and it's just FYI. We're deleting language that was in there that would have required us to remove unfinished homes and the improvements, And that was in there from a previous version of the code. At one time, apparently back in 2016, apparently there were fears from 2008, where you all remember the days where there were unfinished homes in certain places and they sat there for many years. And I think there were fears that they would remain if the economy went bad. But I think our job as a city is to make sure that we bond for houses and improvements to make sure that they get completed. And that's kind of how we're going to rewrite our language to make sure that that gets done. And so that if something fails, some other developer or a bank can come back and finish the project to make sure that the money is there to finish the house or the improvements. Our intent is not to come out and start tearing down houses, which is what the previous code required. So we agree that language should come out of there, and that's what we're going to suggest in the next version. So we're updating some other changes at the request of our city attorney, and that's in the hold harmless section of the agreement, just a short sentence. And so Grant Woods and I have been working closely on, Grant Wood and I have been working closely on that section of the code. Our next steps, we've done our SEPA checklist and our SEPA notices. We've notified the Department of Commerce and we've asked for a 10-day expedited review so we can move this forward quickly. The public hearing notices have been done, and our public hearings, as I've mentioned, are already scheduled. Your hearing is March 16th, so that's coming up very quickly. And again, we're doing this to expedite this for the development community, as well as give us enough time to ponder the various changes we need to make as we go forward. So I know this is a lot of information quickly, but we're available for any questions you may have.
Councilor Servadius.
I would just like to say, Mr. Cool, Mr. Weed, whoever all has been involved with this, thank you. You know, we often talk, it's been referenced tonight, Mr. Weisner made a comment about how quickly sometimes, or how not quickly, a municipality and government can move. And, you know, I appreciate these changes. The one really makes sense. We all received, I think, all of council, and I think the mayor and city administrator were also CC'd on that email from one of the developers that this will affect. And it makes sense. I mean, it's a tough call. You don't want to have an unfinished product sit there, yet I think that's probably not often the case. And so there's probably a little bit of risk you always take if you don't have that bond in there. And the question is, can we even get that bond? If, you know, would a bank issue that, or could you get it bonded? But I think it's a risk worth taking to help these folks get some inventory built for our city, with the assumption that they're going to be able to finish these projects. And if they don't, well, then we will have to solve that at that time. But I really appreciate, Mr. Cool, you and your team and staff working on this and getting it brought forward, because as I've said many times, and I think my peers agree, housing is one of our utmost and urgent needs in the city, and it fuels everything else, predominantly economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to echo, late this afternoon, I called Mr. Cool, and he was kind enough to take my call, and he helped me see some other views, and he listened to mine. And so I really appreciate staff being open. And he had mentioned that he had been working with our attorney, Mr. Grant Weed, over this. So I know this was expedited, but houses, we need to get houses for the people, so they're not always driving off the island and coming back. So thank you, and your staffs that are working with you. I know it just, you also have worker bees with you. So thank you very, very much. This is so encouraging.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, I'd like to echo that as well. Mr. Cool, Mr. Weed, you don't know how important this really is to
to move this thing along and keep it moving along. And I feel confident that we can all keep moving this forward. And again, I appreciate everybody's effort in this. It would sure be nice to see some things get into the ground and up when the weather gets nice and building season starts. So again, thank you guys for all your extra work and moving this along fast. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Mack. I think that concludes the comments, it looks like now, so there's no action necessary at this point. At this time, the council will enter into executive session per RCW 423110 to discuss litigation with legal counsel. Anticipated duration is 10 minutes, and that's about all we have left in our allotted time. Executive sessions are not open to the public. We do not plan to make any decisions. I'm going to hustle into my office, and it should only take a few minutes, and then we'll reconvene the meeting and adjourn at that time.
The recording has stopped.
Okay, Mayor, you're good.
Okay, I'd like to reconvene the regular meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council, February 16th. The time is 9:36. We are just coming out of executive session where no decisions were made there. And I think that concludes our business for the evening. I want to say thank you to the City Council. This was an interesting meeting. And as I think we heard tonight, obviously you put a lot of thought into your decisions tonight. I can't thank you enough for your time and effort and all your work. So thank you. Seeing no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, raise your hands and have a good, safe evening.
Bye.
See you now. Thanks.
Mhm.